Hello and welcome to Whose Turn Is It Anyway, a podcast all about our gaming group and the games we play. This episode we are on part 2 of our Essen discussion and revisit of everything we did in Essen. If you haven't listened to part 1, recommend you do that first because it kind of informs the second half and you probably just want to listen to more of us. So definitely check out part 1 first, but this is part 2. We left off on Friday evening and so we're going to start talking about Saturday. But before we do, how is everyone doing today?
Feeling like loads more energy. I know I said that in the first part. I said, I've got loads of energy, and I was lying through my teeth. But naturally, this time, I am feeling pretty good because we've had a few days recovery, haven't we, since the recording of that episode?
We made an executive decision. I was like, should we push on? And everyone was like, no, it'll be like on midnight when we finish. And the energy levels were sort of a bit dipping at the end. But yeah, I'm glad we took the break, kind of, because we've then postponed a few times because of various life stuff.
Rona.
And colds and stuff like that as well. So hence, if I sound a little bit more nasally than I normally do, it's a cold that I've been nursing for a few days.
But we're back, baby. We're back.
Yeah, we're back. Very early time in the morning instead.
Yeah. But on
on a Sunday morning.
I know.
We never record on a Sunday morning.
It's weird. But
I can't work out if I like it or not. I think we'll find out at the end of this if we wanted to ever do it again.
I think halfway through my levels might peak, like my energy levels. But at the moment, the caffeine hasn't hit me. I've had my caffeinated tea, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm on a race. So I'm on a race of recording this episode, and which is going to finish first? Is it the episode or my roast dinner? So so I've had to prepare a roast literally right before this episode, and it's on timers. And it's quite nervous, right?
You eat a roast at like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock.
Yeah, but I don't know how long this episode's going to be recording for, Davey. You know how it goes.
He's got it set for like 2 o'clock.
You're roasting a whole turkey. Like, how long is it going to take to roast?
It's on a timer, as in it'll kick in the oven at a certain time. Yeah. So I've had to kind of get it prepared.
I think you can have roast dinner at 11 o'clock in the morning.
No, I'm not a Philistine.
Oh, do you want brunch? Yeah, it's just a full roast dinner.
No, so it's like, which is going to finish first, roast or episode recording? It's exciting. Nice. It's exciting stuff, listeners.
Do you like playing that game, JP?
I love it.
Who will finish first?
Who will finish first? Now, less of your smut, Davey, and let's...
It's a Sunday morning, Davey.
Yeah, it's a day of rest and holiness.
Sorry, he cut that out.
No, I'm leaving in.
You're leaving it in.
Shall we, on that note, get into Essen itself?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, shall we start with Saturday morning? And JP, I think you got what's the nice word? You got pulled in for a little bit of overtime on your Mindclash hours, didn't you?
I did. I got asked nicely. I was actually on the day before, on the Friday, and they said, "Look, can you do us a favour, JP?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, what is it?" So, can you do another hour after your couple of hours? And the reason was because Julian Chapeau's, one of the designers of Ironwood, was demoing that morning as well, and they wanted to free him up for press, which is fair enough. You know, he's a designer, he wants to talk to press and do sorts of things, and obviously if he's demoing, he can't do that. So I said, yeah, no worries. So I took the mantle and I did a few more hours, and actually I had a nice chat with Julian as well, because he was literally demoing on the next table to me, and and we were kind of got chatting, and he goes, he asked obviously what I did, and I mentioned that we're from the podcast, and he went, oh God, I know you guys are. I listen to you guys, and that was quite surreal. It's like, what? You listen to us? So yeah. And he said it really likes like the fact that there's loads of information on our episodes, and we can kind of cut through chapters and things like that, so we can kind of get to the bits that he wants to listen to. And I was like, yeah, we just had a really good chat. It was really nice, and it's just like one of those little humbling moments. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
Did he comment upon your social media post of you taking a demo copy of Ironwood into bed with you by any chance?
I think he did at the time.
Okay.
He didn't mention it, actually. I don't know if he thought it was weird or exciting. I don't know. But I kind of remember him at the time at UK Games Expo, him kind of engaging. And I think it's probably what brought him to the podcast, to be fair. which is, who's this guy sleeping with my game? It's got a
it's
list
weird
of
and
that.
exciting.
Yeah, it's weird and strange, but I kind of like it and kind of dig it. So yeah, so I did a bit of extra overtime, and again, that was fine. It was good fun. And being that it was Saturday, I just thought, sod it, it's going to be a busy day anyway. Although weirdly, it ended up not feeling as busy as maybe the Thursday because of what we talked about in the last episode with the Union Day. But yeah, good fun as always.
I think a lot of people ended up where games have been sold out and where they had already done 2 days and maybe wanted to play the games that they had bought. Saturday actually wasn't as busy as it had been in previous years.
Yeah.
Or previous year after me being there once before. There was a noticeable difference, wasn't there, on Saturday?
But weirdly, because my extra shift was like I finished at 12 and they wanted me to come back at 1. So I kind of had an hour of like, well, I can't really go and do anything too long. I can't go and demo anything because the time I get started, I'll have to be coming back, So I just thought, I'm going to chill in there at a little break room in the back of the Mindclash booth and just have a coffee and, just take the load off a little bit mentally. And so I did that. And in walks David Turczi. And he pops in and he goes, "Oh, I know you," because we obviously did the episode fairly recently around Star Trek Captain's Chair. So he literally just throws me a Star Trek Captain's Chair promo. I think he's got like a Mary Poppins pocket where he could literally just pull infinite copies of this promo and give it to people. And yeah, we had a really good chat. We were just chatting for 45 minutes, nearly up to an hour. I had to keep checking my watch going, I need to be back on shift, David. I literally got to go back. But he was telling me all sorts of stuff and stuff I can't repeat on this podcast. So it's like a little tease there, but I literally can't because I might get shot by the board game snipers, and some of which is Mindclash and some of which is other things. And all I can say is that there's some cool things coming out, and I think people are going to be very excited on some of the games that are in Mindclash's back catalogue, and also just anything that kind of Turczi's involved with. So yeah, I'm kind of in the know, and it's great, but I have to keep these secrets to myself for now. So yeah,
keep your secrets.
I will keep them. But yeah, exciting stuff. But no, it's again privileged to have a chat with him for that long. And he had his son with him, Zevi, and that was quite cool. So he's basically he was there on the Perseverance episode 4 table just before the show opened. He was just playing with the dinosaurs, and he's so cute, man. This little kid is like a little David Turczi child, just already probably designing games. He's probably already there. He's cool. He's very cute.
He's already on Perseverance episode 5 and 6.
Yeah, he's already making it. Yeah, in his head, he's like, right, we'll do this, we'll do that. But no, it's just nice to see that side. Yeah,
nice, happy days. So while you were doing that, myself and Davey were having another wander, as we were doing on the mornings while JP was doing his demos. And I think the first we went by, because you'd mentioned Tea Garden before, so we went by the Albi stand, and I think we ended up playing Atoll.
Yeah, we played Atoll in the end because it was free, and we had an American chap join us for the game. And yeah, we got a teach. The teach was fairly straightforward. The guy was like, "Oh, English isn't, I'm not very good at English, so bear with me." Teaches it perfectly. It was fine.
It happened a few times over the weekend where I think, people are just nervous of it and of getting things wrong. And then they just give you actually a really decent, strong teach at the end of it. And you're like, well, it may not have been like flawless English, but neither's mine. So that's fine. You've given us a good enough teach.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard to teach a game in your native language, let alone trying to teach a game in a different language. I mean, Christ, that is a skill.
Yeah,
like not being able to just have a conversation, but be able to teach a board game with intricate rule sets in a different language. I mean, kudos to anyone who can do it.
There was a word I think he forgot. I think he forgot the word pearl or something like that. So he just pointed at the piece, and we all went, "Oh, pearl!" And he went, "Yeah," pearl, and it was like, "Cool, that's fine. That's not a problem," sort of thing. So yeah. Anyways, Davey, sorry, you were saying.
That's right. So it was kind of like it's a tableau builder. We start with your little choral piece. So Atoll can be an island mass that surrounds a lagoon, or it can be a big body of coral, which is what we're building. So start with the coral piece, and on this piece it has kind of your little coral symbols, and that's your prerequisite to be able to build onto there, along with you have to buy the card for money. There's like a variety of different fish that come out that you can build that have abilities. And then one of the other actions is you feed them. And when you feed them, usually you've got a little marker on there that you get more VPs when they're fed. There's certain interactions which are quite cool, where you had predator fish that could eat other people's fish. You had a little token you had to flip. You could only do it once. Some cards that break that. There's also, if there's two fish that have a harmony with each other, when you feed one, the other one also gets fed. And you kind of build out, and you're buying coral pieces so you get more, like, your coral combinations right, because the big fish take a lot. They want a lot of coral, sometimes like 5. Sometimes you're going to have to put an extra coral piece on there to be able to get that. And which are usually big sharks and stuff like that. And then you've got the medium. So you had 3 shop rows, I think. 1 coral, 1 for the big fish, and 1 for the medium and small fish. So great little game so far. You've also got oil, which you've got an action where you can clean up the oil, or you've got an action where you can bring tourists in to get more money. But if you bring tourists in, you get more oil out. And then there's like a little end phase thing where you can either choose to do science, which basically will just give you the money, or you can choose to, you've got your conservation, where you can kind of clean your atoll, you get rid of 2 oil for some money. But if you do that, you can't take tourists at the end, which will give you money, a larger sum of money, but also will give you some oil as well. So that's kind of the basic premise of the game. You've got kelp as well, which is usually what you feed your smaller fish with, and also you can trade 4 kelp in, I think, for
it's
two
algae.
money.
Did they call it algae?
The algae?
I think so.
Yeah, maybe algae. It looked like kelp to me, but
green blobs. Yeah,
just little green blobs, maybe seaweed or something. Yeah. Great little game. Nice tableau builder. There's kind of one glaring issue that I had with it, which was I built up a little engine for medium fish. Never saw medium fish because there's so many different species symbols. There's like, I think when we counted, there was like 14 or something ridiculous of species symbols. So trying to get your engine working off one of those types, some of them basically encompassed 3 different types, and those cards seemed fine because you would see one of those types. That's fine. But for the fact that we played 3 rounds, I think, out of...
Yeah, it was over half the game, wasn't it?
We played over half the game out of 4 or 5. And I saw 1 medium fish that whole time. And I was like, oh, this combos with that, this combos with that. Cool. Now I've just got to get medium fish into my atoll. Didn't see them. I was like,
drought.
Oh, okay. And this is like, most of us were buying cards every round. So the cards were coming out. So
and you sweep 2 between rounds, don't you? You sweep the last 2 so that you've got that constant move.
So it's not the moving shop that's the problem. The shop, you go through cards. You see a lot of different cards. That was fine. What it seems like there might be an issue is there's a big stack of cards there, but
too many animal types.
Yeah, there's too many animal types. And then my other grievance was the fact that it was 50 quid because it was in a massive box, and the only justification I could see for that was there was a big cardboard token that could have been a card size.
Yeah, the round thing that told you
big round thing
for passing first and stuff like that. So there's a bit of a board. It could have been a lot smaller, or 2 boards that you could stack on top of each, like in storage could be stacked on top of each other or something like that.
I mean, it had less components than White Castle, and the box was bigger than White Castle.
Yeah, there was definitely the price. Yeah, the price is what it is. I've seen, you sort of see wildly fluctuating prices to me. Sometimes a little box is like €40, and sometimes a big box is €30 sort of thing. And yet I don't feel like what I'm getting is equivalent to the money. So that I can understand. But I think I'm going to call them tags because I think that's what everyone will refer to them as. Right. The fish types. So you've got like crustaceans and anemones and little fish and medium fish and stuff like that. And there's about 7 or 8 of them. And most cards, there's a few cards that had harmonies with multiple, so you could kind of diversify. But most cards only had 1 harmony. So there was 2 of us that had crustaceans as a type, so lobsters and crabs and bits and pieces like that. And I think the whole game we only saw one, and yet two of us had multiple things that wanted harmonies with them. Now, there'd have been somewhere else in that stack, but it's a bit odd that you didn't see it. And we kind of had a flick through, and it is kind of quite an even mix, but because there's so many, you just won't see some for rounds and rounds. And it felt a bit, there's a lot of comparisons. We made comparisons at the table to Earth, because the coral needs to be diagonally next to each other. Because where Davey was saying there's a requirement for coral, the coral cards have a coral image on each side of the cards at each edge, but not all of them have a coral on each edge sort of thing. They'll have them on 2 of the edges or 3 of the edges. And so officials say, I want 3 corals. So it needs to sit between 3 cards, all with coral pointing towards where you want to put that fish.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there's this kind of nice, like you're building up the coral diagonally, and then in between that sit all your fish and different sea creatures and all that kind of stuff. And I found that quite a satisfying idea, because there were certain corals and that I wanted to build in certain places, and then it meant I couldn't buy certain fish when I wanted to because I didn't have the coral value, the place to put it inside a coral where it would be happy or able to sit, or whatever you want to talk about, or however you sort of want to discuss it. But I thought that was quite a neat thing. And then the feeding increases the value, but they're different. It's a bit like with Earth, when you build up the growths, like it's normally like, they're 1 point each bit until you put the cap on, and then it's worth 10 points or whatever it is. It was kind of similar to that. Some of them were like 0, because there were 3 levels for each of them. Some of them were like 0, 1, 6. Some were 0, or like 2, 3, 4. So there was a nice sort of thing of, I really need to feed this before I feed that, kind of in a similar way to Earth. So I thought there was a nice puzzle there, and it was a little bit less draft heavy in the way that Earth is. But the number of tags, I think, made that puzzle harder and less satisfying than it should have been.
Yeah, I feel like I built an engine and had no payout, which isn't nice when you build an engine for a certain kind of type as well, or maybe I went down one avenue too much, and you can't do that. But it felt like you could do that, or it felt like the mechanics were pointing to the fact that do this thing, this will be cool, and then there was no payout, which doesn't feel good.
I'm more amazed that David didn't make a pun around anemone through that whole segment. That's.
I didn't have any of those. I only had medium fish. It was Adrian with all the anemones, I think, wasn't it? You had loads of the weird squishy sea creatures.
I ended up with something. I can't even think what it was now. I ended up with
sea cucumber.
Yes, that was it. Something along those lines. It had a really weird ability that sounded quite cool, and it did work. I just can't remember what it was off the top of my head. But yeah,
play. Atoll.
So we walked over to Funforge, and so if you don't know, I backed the original Monumental, and I have the board game, and I was talking to Adrian about it quite a lot, and I have since I've had it, because I've been like, I really like the card engine in the game, and the board. People really don't like this game because of the downtime in between turns, which I can understand, and that's been the biggest criticism of it. But in the original Monumental, you have 3x3 grid of cards. You activate a row and a column, and then you get to do those things. And then at the end, you basically discard those cards and draw some more. These cards usually give you resources, which is science, production, culture, and gold, and military. In the board game version, you use the military to move your figures around and get stuff. It kind of adds too much. It kind of adds a little bit too much like action space. So that's why the turns take so long, because you can do that in any order. And then you get science to spend on research, production to spend on production cards. So your new buildings, which are cards that go on top of your deck, which is always important to remember. And then culture is used to basically bring in new diplomatic policies, which will give you powers. So they've got a new game that's come out, which is Monumental Duel. And it's a 2-player version of that, but just with the card section. So me and Adrian sat down and played it. And what were your thoughts, Adrian?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I I suppose before we get into that, it's quite an interesting one because we walked up, asked them, as you do, sort of, is it booked or do we just sit? No, that's fine. Sort of hung around, and there was a couple clearly just about to finish their game, so we sort of hung around there. And then we just kind of sat down. Luckily, you know a few bits about it, but we just reset the table ourselves. You had a quick flick through the manual, gave me a quick teach, and they kind of just let us get on with it, and then came over and went, any questions? Can see you've had a look at it all. Is there any questions? Because it was such... I think I'd have struggled a bit more if you didn't know Monumental, Davey, but you clearly knew it. I think when you walked up, it was clear you knew because you were pointing me through bits and pieces. So I think they made a conscious decision to kind of leave us alone and then come over and ask us questions if we needed any sort of help or anything like that, and they came over quite a few times while we were playing the game. We got a whole game in.
That's good.
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting way, but it was weird to kind of just come over to a table that's not been set up, there's just cards everywhere, and be like, right, let's organise this. Especially with me not knowing what the components are, how they need to be divided up, just kind of going, should we just reset this table? And again, not necessarily a bad thing. They gave us plenty of time and all that kind of stuff to set it up. But yeah, the game itself was fun, which was, the puzzle is easy to get into, but is still a good puzzle. As you say, there's 3x3 grid, so 9 cards, and you put these cards out deal them out from your deck from top left to bottom right, and you pick a row and a column to activate. So you kind of, I'm going to call tap it, but you would sort of move them to show that you've activated those ones, and then you get all the bonuses. And if they've got any actions, you do them one at a time. And you pass backwards and forwards. So you get to do an action, I get to do an action. Was that the way it was?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember. I was like, I'm sure that's the way it was.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you pass backwards and forwards on the actions, and there's plenty of actions that can be done. And then you'll buy things from the shop to upgrade your deck, or there's various other bits and pieces. You've kind of got a deck of 5 cards, which I forget the name of, Dave. You'll have to remind me. They're the cultures.
Diplomacy cards.
And you will basically put them down in any order you want to, but the more you've got in the stack, the more culture it costs, the more those little feather quills culture. It costs to play those cards. The first one costs 1 culture, the second one costs 2 culture, and each time you play one, you activate all the previous ones as well, like the lightning bolts on the previous ones. So all of that worked really well, I felt, in a simple to understand, but sort of difficult to kind of, not difficult, but there was definitely that puzzle there. There was turns I was thinking, I don't want to activate this column, but I do want to activate this row. Okay, that means I kind of need to activate this column to give me what I need, which will then leave me a better setup for next turn. Because if you just take what you want this turn, there's a couple of turns I had where I just left Gumph on the field and then knew that I probably would have a worse turn the next turn because I'd not kind of set myself up for a good turn. So all of that was great. And we played with, so there's 3 versions of the game. There's exploration, trade, and
espionage.
I was going to call it exploit, but that's 4X games. And espionage. And we played trade, which is kind of, they're designed to be different levels of interactivity, and trade is the medium interactivity. And with that, you have cities down the middle. With trade, you have cities down the middle that you send your scout to, who pays gold to trigger one-off abilities. But if you get 4 gold on there before your opponent does, you nick the city, and you can treat it as a normal action for yourself, which was just enough, I thought. I quite like that level of interactivity. And you can also take each other's lands. So part of
province,
part of the like having the military, as you say, instead of moving around a board, which I don't know because I've not played the game, but instead you can kind of take these provinces that add, and they give you a one-off bonus, like an immediate bonus, but they're also worth victory points, and quite a few. And then I can attack Davey's one and take it off him as well, and then I get the one-off ability again and stuff like that. So there was a nice level of interactivity.
Without it being mean.
Without it being too mean, yeah. And I understand why it's a dual version, because we had a bit of a talk afterwards. And so I wonder if they could make that 3 or 4 player. And I think it would be, as you say, I think it might slow the game down a bit too much. But a 2-player game, I found it really enjoyable. I found the puzzle interesting without being complex. And the fact that each box, so you've got the 3 different types of boxes, each box has 3 different civilizations in that you play as. So across the 3 boxes, there's 9 nations or civilizations, whatever you want to call them, to play. It felt to me like if you bought all 3, you would have a lot to explore in that game. But I would be happy to play. I can't think who I played as, but I would be happy. I just got loads of gold is all I really remember. I would be happy to play that nation a couple more times, I think, before I felt the need to try a new one. Or happy to sort of rotate across them, because I feel like I could play it a few times and still get a different experience.
Yeah, I really enjoy the game anyway. From what I saw, I think we played the demo JP at the expo, like for Monumental.
Oh God, yeah, about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago, I think.
Yeah,
with the designer there.
Intrigued by it. It's I'd be keen to give it a go.
Well, yeah. Funforge were very kind and gave us a discount on the 3-box bundles, so we split that up between us. And yeah, it was just, I'm intrigued to say I've got the exploration set, which is the one that's a little bit less combative, if that's the right word, a little bit less interactive. So I'm intrigued to see what that does as well.
Yeah, I think from what I read, you go out and you explore areas, and they're like it's just like another kind of shop area where you get more benefits and effects that come out. So it's pretty much just gives you more choice, but without the interaction of I'm going to take this free city of you off of you, or that kind of design space. Whereas the espionage one, it has a dice, I think, and you send spies to other people's cities, and then you roll the dice and you can get effects depending on what your spy does. So I think you can take stuff off of people and stuff like that. So, yeah. Yeah, that's the knobby one.
Yeah, the knobby one. So naturally you've got that one, Davey.
I do have that
because you like a bit of knobby games, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I don't mind negative player interaction as long as we've all signed up for that kind of space.
Exactly. Yeah, makes sense.
We've signed the social contract, so you knob me, I'll knob you. That's fine. Maybe I shouldn't describe it like that. You screw me, I'll screw you. Yeah, probably the same context.
It's too much knobbing talk going on.
Anyway. So after that, we had a bit of a wander around the halls, wait for JP to finish up. I think, so I'd been talking about Men-Nefer, because I'd seen Flatiron, that interested me, but when I realised it was 2-player, I was a bit like, as cool as it looks, and as much as I think the puzzle looks good, I'm not sure. But this Men-Nefer looks interesting. I need to kind of see a bit more of it. And Dave was like, there looks like there's some space here. Let's have a sit down. And I was just, me, I need to be an hour ready for a meeting. So I was like, I don't have time to be ready for the meet and greet. And David was like, let's just sit down. It'll be fine. Like, my brain just couldn't handle the idea of just an hour to go to the meet and greet. I was going to sit down and start a demo. I just couldn't do it. So I went wandering, found JP, who had been recollared by Mr. Turczi.
Yeah.
And pulled back into the little booth for one more talking to. And about an hour went past, and then myself and JP went up to the meet and greet, and Davey followed. To be fair, not much later. I think you kind of came up just as we were actually going into the building.
Yeah.
When you were going up the escalator, I was shouting up to you. I was being blinded from both of those
bald heads.
Yeah. It was like I was on the stairway to heaven, and
there's a couple of boobs just going.
But so I did play Men-Nefer, so I should probably talk about that. The teacher was great. The guy was very enthusiastic. He was good at kind of giving you reasons as to why you were doing these actions within Men-Nefer. It's all about the fact that Egyptians were see death as being not the end of your life. Mm-hmm. It's your next step. It's the next journey. It's kind of where you want to be in a lot of sense. So it was about how you had a very split kind of action board. You could go up the Nile, and you had actions over here. You could start building part of the pyramids. So you had an action space over here. You could bury the bodies into one of 4 people that weren't pharaohs. So forget the name of it, or no one that was kind of special, but you still had a special burial ground. Or you could go up and give gifts to the gods and go up this priest things, or you could build sphinxes, and obviously sphinxes guide you through to the afterlife. So great little design, great theme. Did it actually feel like I was doing any of that? I don't know. I was playing a Euro.
Cubes are moving.
Yeah. I think it was from the designer that designed Bitoku. So when you have like these little action tiles that you would basically go and present, and you do that action. But then when you do that action, you would also put your scarab out. And when you put your scarab out, there's a little track that you go along. When you go up that track, you don't put your scarab out, you put your worker out, and then on that track, your scarab gets to go up these like tech tracks. But the further up they get, either your action gets better, so you can put better sphinxes out and get more rewards, or you'll get more actions on the boat track, or you get certain effects while going up this track. And then it had the whole ascension thing from Bitoku, where you could, as an action, you could choose to ascend over to that, and you'd get to move that track. So you had to look where people are, because if people are there, it gets very expensive, and you pay everything in fish. So all your general costs are in fish. And you kind of had two action types. One, to put these workers out with and get these action spaces. And then one was to take them back. And then when you take it back, you get an action where the tile laying is. But then when you're taking it back, and when you put them out, you also want to match these symbols. So you put up another little track on your board. There's a lot of tracks everywhere. And it was very bitty game. I think I would want to get more stuck in with it, because maybe I probably shouldn't have done it an hour before I was Adrian was saying, because I don't think I was in the right headspace for it in some aspects. But for me, it looks amazing. The theme's great. It's very bitty. Like, oh, I'm going to do a little bit over here. Oh, I'm going to do a little bit over here. And I'm going to do a little bit over here. And then you had another track. I haven't even mentioned the other track, where you have to get your heart over to the feather. And because that's when you die, you get weighed. Yes. And if your heart is heavier than the feather, then you don't get to go to the afterlife you want. So there's this minus VP interaction where if you don't meet them, you get minus VPs. And if you go past them, you start getting positive VPs. Your heart's as light as anything. It's flown up into the clouds.
So having watched Moon Knight on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I was waiting for that. I understand that reference. It's like, I get that. They're kind of weighing your like soul really to make sure you've actually had a worthwhile life and you actually contributed. And depending on that outcome will depend on where you're going, son. So interesting.
It was a very interesting game, and as I said, I really like the theme, but I do feel for me it's a little bit bitty, and I like to have either a combo engine or I'm doing these cool things, and there's not that with it. You're doing a little bit over here and a little bit over here, and I want to be able to do this so that I can do more over here, maybe focus a little bit. But they did say you can't focus in that game. You need to be able to do a little bit of everything. So I prefer games where I focus down on a strategy, or I can like drill home a strategy, rather than as soon as I start doing little bits here, there, and everywhere, my ADHD takes over, and I'm like, where am I? What am I doing? I've just lost all track of what I'm actually meant to be doing. So for me, it was too bitty, but I can see why people will enjoy that game.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously it was the game. I looked at it first, right, and then Davey ended up sitting down and being like, "No, we can fit a demo in," and I was like, "I can't." After that feedback, I was like, it's a bit disappointing. But I then went and watched a bit of a video about it, and it kind of re-excited me for it, because I don't mind not having that combo engine. I know, Davey, as you say, that's kind of your jam, but I don't mind knowing that I've got to tactically go after just a little bit to get that resource. Right now I need to go to here to get that. I quite like that style of Euro as well. So I'm kind of a bit re-enthused to try it, if I'm honest. So I'm hoping at some point I'll get a chance for it. But as you say, when I looked at the board looked gorgeous, but also looked like every area was a little segment onto itself with different tracks and stuff like that. And I think sometimes that can be great. I've played some great games like that, and I've also played some games where it kind of then feels like you're just playing like 5 little mini games almost. So I need to invest a bit more time in looking at it, I think. But the start of the playthrough I watched had me reinvigorated.
Yeah, as I said, I don't think it's a bad game. It's just not for me. And it doesn't feel like you're doing 5 little mini games. They all interlink in some aspect, and they all kind of go down or go along with what track you're going down. But it is a very bitty game. That's the only way for me to describe it, really, is you do need to do a little bit here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah. And then we went to the meet and greet. So this was new for us this year. We got press passes for the first time. And before we actually went off to Essen, Paul said, wouldn't it be great if all of us sort of, are we all Southwesterners? But
yeah,
all of us sort of
maybe not all, UK, sort of Southwest. Yeah.
Generally UK, but it turns out a lot of us were from the southwest of England. Wouldn't it be good if we all got on the same time slot for the meet and greet, and then we can all meet up and have a chat as together anyway, and then people will know they just need the one time slot to come and meet and greet if they want to see multiple of us. Which was great. And I really didn't know what to expect from this. JP signed us up.
Neither.
And because we were in the chat, and I said, yeah, just JP, let us know, because I didn't know whether we were going to need like a seat each or how it worked or anything like that. And then, yeah, it just turned out to be a giant open hall, didn't it, JP?
Yeah, it's a bit of a free-for-all, is what I'd explain it as. So you'll kind of walk into the room. So we kind of congregated outside, and we saw Mark Dainty from Not Board Gaming, who we've interacted with quite a few times. We saw Mark Monk from Ninja Geek Games. Again, we know him, been on the pod as well. Obviously, Paul Grogan was there, and Tom Heath from Slicker Drips, again, with his different Hawaiian shirt and shorts combo had turned up as well. So yeah, we kind of all congregated, and then we went in. It was like, oh, okay. So weirdly, I was expecting like if you can imagine a school exam hall where you've kind of got tables arranged in a grid-like fashion, where you'd have each I don't know, like podcast / YouTube channel, whoever. I thought we would all be kind of allocated our own little areas, but it was
JP thought he was doing Comic-Con book site, like comic book.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I generally, I don't know. So you basically go in, and it's just like, oh, okay, everyone's just everywhere, and but it's quite cool because you get to kind of see, other people around the industry, and it's quite nice to kind of, no, these are real people. It's really weird, but they're real people, but you get to see them in the flesh, kind of, as it were. But yeah, we kind of congregated around a little area. We have formed a V-shaped table so that we could basically grab people. And yeah, it was quite nice just to hang, I think, for an hour and a bit and just catch up with other people. And it's fair to say, I would absolutely lie and say we're absolutely swamped by loads of people to come and visit, but I'll be lying out my arse, because to be fair, we didn't really get loads of people come to say hello to us specifically. And I don't think a lot of our listeners were probably at Essen. So it's one of those things. But it was quite cool to be there, just chatting about, what people's favourite games are, and yeah, just nice. It was just a nice hour, I found.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like snack hour, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we just sat down.
Everyone just started passing around snacks in the circle.
Yeah. I had little Dorito bite bits things that I kind of passing around, and it was let's just take an hour, chill out for a minute, and have a chat, and it was nice.
Well, what I've noticed as well is people visiting Paul.
He didn't sit down,
but they bring him snacks. Like, we need to get this system going, because they just bought him snacks, and that was where the first one came out, was because he was like, "Oh, do you want to try some of these snacks that these people have bought?" Sort of thing. And yeah, okay. And then after that, the snacks did not stop. But yeah,
his snack of choice is Jaffa cakes, right? That's Paul Grogan's snack. So we can't. I feel like we need our own version. Like, what is our Whose Turn Is It Anyway podcast snack brand that we're going to link with?
Pizza.
And it's not Schwip Schwap, by the way. It's not going to be the drink.
No,
Schwip Schwap. We're all about
I hated that drink. That was one of the most disgusting drinks I ever drank. And it's everywhere as well. So I was on the train back, I bought a Coke. And I was like, oh, and it was like organic Coke from the Eurostar. So I was like, oh, cool. Opened it, and I was like, God, the toilet smell. God, what's that smell? It smelled like a urinal cake. And then I took a swig of my drink and I went, oh, it's this Coke I've just opened. And I looked at the side and it's like lemon Coke. And I'm just like, oh,
with citrus.
Why do they put orange and lemon in all of their drinks?
Because it's it's the right thing to do.
It's what they do. It's
amazing. Yeah, I think we should have Schwip and wagon wheels.
No, I'm not a fan of wagon wheels.
You're not a fan of wagon wheels? Wagon wheels are great.
Nice alliteration, isn't it?
The jammy ones I'm all right with, but the basic wagon wheels just blanders. Boring.
I mean, I like a plain digestive as well, so...
Yeah. I was smashing the pickups though. If you ever the pickup bars, which is basically reverse of chocolate.
I thought don't let Shell hear you say that.
No, chocolate, biscuit, chocolate. It reverses it. So it's biscuit, big thick bit of chocolate in the middle, and biscuit underneath. And I'll tell you what, they're cracking. They're cracking. Nice. And you can get them in the UK, and you can get them in Germany. Anyway, we got off on.
We haven't decided on a snack at all. Though. Let's just say Stroop waffle.
Oh, Stroop waffles.
Stroop waffles always a safe bet. They're always good.
Yeah, they're good. I like how many. They're just the right amount of cinnamon because I'm not usually a massive fan of cinnamon.
Yeah,
but these have it's more like a sprinkle on them rather than like all I can taste is burning in my mouth.
Yeah, it's just.
And I like spicy food, so I don't know what it is with cinnamon, but it just seems to. Maybe I'm allergic to it.
Anyway, back from the snack chat. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say really about the meet and greet, but yeah, I'd enjoy it. I'd like to. I think Chris Prescott from Unfringed Games. He bless him. I have to tell this story. He's like, oh, I thought the meet and greet was on Friday, so he wrestled all the security guards and everything to get to the meet and greet, but it was a day earlier. Bless him, to see us because it'd be nice to see him. We didn't actually get to meet him during the show, so yeah, he was busy demoing Moving Wild, so his kind of readaptation of Zuli into the Oink Games catalogue, which looks cool, looks kind of different. I quite like those thin cards that it comes with, but so yeah, so he was.
Yeah, I've picked up a copy.
Oh, you did, didn't you?
Yeah, I picked up a copy. So I thought it'd be great to play with my family next week.
What I wanted to say for the meet and greet was it's supposed to be a meet and play, right? You're supposed to play games with people that come and do it. But I think there's only like 3 games in this hall of 70 people, 80 people. It's a big old hall, and I think I only saw 3 games being played in that whole thing. Everyone else was just up to chat.
Yeah,
and I had a guy come sit next to me who I didn't know whether he was a friend of the podcast or whatever, just started chatting. And I thought he said, my name is Mike. And I was like, oh, Mike, how are you doing? All right. His name is Michael Mikes. That's his full name. And if you recognise that name, he's the co-designer of Project L, the sort of tile Tetris-y style game, which is good fun. But he didn't drop that for ages. So I was trying to understand he was talking about being in the industry and all that lot. And he was talking about game founds and things that he's helped run and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, okay, that's cool. And he's like, oh, I'm also co-designer of Project L. Oh, just casual like that. Yeah, fair enough. But he was great to have a chat to. And he went and spoke to Mark Monk as well. And it's just interesting. He was kind of quite interested in, why do we do the podcast? How does that work? Kind of when I said, oh, there's 9 of us on there and we just kind of rotate. It's, oh, that's interesting. That's different. And sort of talking about that. Have we thought about YouTube? Is there anything we would do with YouTube? All that kind of stuff. And then just asking more about the games industry in general. And it was just, I don't know whether he's listened to us before or not. But either way, it was just nice to have a catch up with someone on kind of quite a semi-casual basis where you've just got this common, it's someone we've not met before. We've got common ground and just have a chat about the world sort of thing. And other people came over as well. And like we had Luke Hector with us from Broken Meeple, and a few people came and said hello to him as well. And a few of them just kind of then stayed and talked to the rest of us. And same with Slicker Drips as well. They came and had a sort of word, and then we just had a bit of a laugh. And it was just such a nice atmosphere. I was worried, kind of, I suppose, to JP's point. I didn't know if it was going to be a bit too stuffy and formal. And
it was nice and chill, wasn't it?
It was pretty chilled, yeah. And while it felt a little bit sort of free fall and unorganised more than I was expecting, I'm glad it wasn't the other end and it was overly formal, where it was kind of like, as you say, like weird classroom setup or something like that, where everyone's going to feel really awkward. So I thought, as much as it's designed for a meet and play, and that's not what was going on 90% of the time, it's just nice to have an hour out and say, I'm glad that we came together as a group of sort of UK content creators as well. I felt like that created a nice dynamic. And I think we kind of wandered around a little bit more, but I don't actually think we did a lot more on the Saturday from memory. I certainly didn't. We
went to the hall for a little bit longer, I think, and then had a look around. And then we were like, oh, let's head back and play some games.
Should we play some games again? Yeah.
Last year, we did a lot more walking, and we didn't actually get to play much in the evenings.
Nope.
So we kind of made a decision this year is we'll grab food on the go. We don't need to spend as much time in the hall because we're there longer, and we still got to kind of see what we wanted to see. But we get to go back and play games, which is what we're there for, right?
But yeah, we called it there, and then we went off and played SETI.
We did.
This would have been what, Davey's fourth or fifth game of SETI?
Yeah, fifth.
My second, your fourth.
My first.
I was lounging around, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the SETI.
Nice. Really bad. Did you have a nice relaxing time on your SETI?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
So SETI is designed by a chap called Thomas Hollick, and he's been a busy boy this Essen because this is one of 3 of his designs that have been released. So we had SETI, he had is it Tea Garden and
Galileo?
Galileo. So just casually dropped 3 games at Essen and gone boom, and all 3 of them have done, I think, exceptionally well. So he's probably a name you're going to hear a lot of over the next year, unless he's just doing 3 and done, and he's like, I've done it now, I've done the hat trick, and I'm off. I imagine he's coming back for
the
more.
Weight's interesting because one, it's like Galileo sits at like kind of mid to a little bit heavy. SETI's on the heavy side, and then Tea Gardens is the mid to, I say light, but it apparently is just more mid-weight.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite interesting.
It's quite interesting.
The design space.
Yeah, so let me set the premise of SETI. So your kind of research corporations are helping to basically search for alien life. And the board itself is it's very visual. It's very colory pop kind of board, and it's all kind of rotated, no pun intended, but rotated around this solar system. And on the solar system, you have the kind of sun that sits in the middle, and you have 3 layers of kind of cardboard that sits kind of over that sun that spin around, which has all the planets on of, Earth and Venus and Mars, etc., etc. And, throughout the game, this thing's going to kind of rotate around, which is quite a cool mechanic in the game. And some would probably say it's gimmicky, but I can totally see how it works and why it works. And certain times in the game, you might have a conjunction of planets that literally just align in one side of the board, which just obviously makes it easy to go around. But really, you're kind of doing a few things on your turn. You can launch probes out into space, and you can kind of move those probes around. You can scan using your telescope for basically different areas or distant systems that are kind of dotted around the far edge of the solar system map. And that's quite nice because it's the position where Earth is very important. Just like in real life, if you're scanning from Earth needs to be in the right position. So as that thing rotates around, you're kind of going, I actually need it over the other side of the board. But there are ways to kind of make that easier. So you can scan and you can get data that you can kind of download into your computer, and your computer can kind of hold 6 bits of data in there before you can allocate it into your computer, which I'll explain in a minute. And so you got that kind of scanning, which is pretty cool. You can, if you've maneuvered your probe into the right kind of planet you're wanting to go to, you can orbit that planet, and then helps you gain income and some resources and victory points. And also you can kind of land your probes onto the planet as well. And and that gives you, again, more Billy bonuses and VPs and things like that. And you can analyze your computer, which is all these data tokens, which look like little mints, like clear mints. And you just kind of want to eat them. But on there has little 1s and 0s, which is quite cool. And you kind of slot those as free actions into your computer. And when you get 6 on the top row, you can kind of run that computer and analyze that data to find more information. But the whole premise of it is that you're doing these actions to find traces of alien life. And there are 3 types of traces that you can find. One from scanning from afar, one from analysing that computer, and one from landing on planets. And on the other side of the map, you've got 2 aliens face down, which you don't know what they are, and the 5 in the game. So you kind of shuffle them, pick 2, put them face down. And when you kind of get one of each trace type, I think it's like blue, yellow, and pink. Once you've got one of each trace type of an alien, you flip that over, and then suddenly some new mechanics and rules kind of interject. So depending on what you've got, will depend on your game of SETI. So not going into any of the aliens, because I'll kind of leave that for a surprise. And I think it's quite nice for people to discover that as they play it, because it's that moment of, right, we found that particular alien race, and it's like, ooh, what's that do? And so generally what the aliens will do is interject some cards into your hand when you discover, and these alien cards are usually more powerful versions of the ones that you're getting out of your hand anyway. And the cards that you kind of have generally throughout the game are multi-purpose, so you will usually play those cards either as cheaper versions of actions that you can do, or you can kind of discard them for their little top left benefit of maybe moving your probe around or getting publicity or doing all sorts of different things. But what I kind of liked about that game as well is that there's a whole tech board, and you can spend publicity to acquire new technologies for your actions. So you can kind of go, you know what, I want to invest into probes so that I can actually have more probes out in space, or it makes it easy for probes to move through asteroids which are on the solar system board, and or you can upgrade your scanning actions, so actually you can scan from the Earth. You can also scan from Venus if you spend popularity, which is on the opposite side of Earth. So it gives you that flexibility of looking at one end of the board and the other, or you can widen your scan, so it's not just one sector, it's actually 3 based on what Earth is. And again, you can just get more efficiency out of that to get more data tokens. And then likewise, you can also invest in technology upgrades that fit into your computer. So rather than just having the six slots that run across the top to run and analyze, you have an additional bonuses that kind of sit underneath. So again, more spaces for your data to go means more resources you can acquire as free actions, and getting a little engine that you're kind of configuring and building as you go. So yeah, you're kind of playing around. You've got 5 rounds in the game, and it's just a nice, like, for me, thematically, it makes sense. Like, for a heavier game, I get what it's doing. I dig space. Again, I've mentioned it before. Space! Love space. So this, for me, was one of my kind of anticipated games for Essen before I came out. And, thankful for you, Davey, for getting a copy for me. Because, I've enjoyed both of my plays. It's been really, really, really interesting game. And for me, I'm just scratching the surface because I'm not super great at it yet. So it's just understanding how to play. But, Davey's on his 4th game and already probably grokking the game.
It's really one of those games where you have to eke out your turns. You've got to try, and sometimes it's better to spend your cards as a resource than try and hold it and think, I'm going to use this ability later. Sometimes getting that one extra resource can mean an extra 20, 30 points on your turn, because that means that resource will get you another specimen, which means, that's going to then trigger this, which then gets me another card in a different aspect. One of the alien cards, which usually have better abilities on, which means I can then play that later. It's a game where sometimes to start with, you think, I can't do anything. What can I do? But actually, there's a lot of different avenues that you can take, and it reminds me of Terra Mystica in that kind of sense. Of Terra Mystica is very much the same and completely different mechanics, obviously, but your resources you have to try and eke out. You don't have many, but you can actually, once you start getting used to that game, you can squeeze out those resources into a lot more points. And it's about understanding the game and basically being like, I want to go down this avenue. How can I do that? And there's usually about 4 different ways of doing it, but one's going to be more efficient.
Yeah, and I think in my first game, underestimated the income cards. So when you gain income, you pick one of your project cards, again, multi-purpose, Not only are you discarding them for little mini actions or playing them for their main actions, on the bottom right, there's a tag which could be energy or credits or card draw, or others if you've got aliens in the mix. But yeah, you can, as an income, you can kind of tuck it under your little corporation card, and then you gain that resource there and then. But also when you run your income every round, you're getting more and more. I know it's obvious, income's always good, but I'd never found that. I struggled to find the path to get it until I went, oh look, most of the orbiting spaces give you income, and I didn't do any orbiting. It's like, that will probably be why then. And again, just understanding how to get to those actions, maybe not obvious in your first play. It might not be obvious that you connect the dots in that way, but like some of these games that you probably need to play just to kind of explore the avenues and know what the avenues are. But again, it didn't detract from my enjoyment from the game. It's like, right, I know what I did wrong. I know what I could do better, and I'm up for playing it again. About you, Adrian? So you obviously had the first play.
Yeah, this was my first play, and I think on top of only being your second play, JP, it's fair to say you'd watched a few hours of YouTube videos.
Yes.
Getting to it, whereas this was not one that was on my list. We'd seen it at Expo. It looked interesting, but not enough to really pull me in. Space is not one of my triggers, if I'm honest. It's not. I don't mind a space game, but it's not going to draw me to a game in that way. And I just sort of looked at the board and thought, this does look, to your point, JP, a bit gimmicky.
Yeah.
And actually, what that central bit does, because of how slowly it rotates and because of the way the 3 layers rotate, it kind of gives you a window of opportunity that you know is going to disappear.
Yeah.
And it won't come back around again anytime soon, especially for the further away planets. And I felt that was going to be a bit of a thing, but didn't quite grasp how little you were going to rotate that dial so that they come back into kind of your easy to get to from a pro point of view. So that was what sort of one of my bits. And then the other thing is, because it's the search for extraterrestrial, and there was quite a bit of the rules around getting these markers and putting them out and unlocking the aliens, it felt like it was something you should aim for. So I went full hog after trying to basically load up markers on aliens, trying to unlock them as quick as possible. And it's not that at all. They're a waypoint in the game that unlock naturally when you're doing things. And it wasn't until after I'd unlocked it and then gone, so wait, I don't get any bonuses for this. Because I can't think the wording we used in the teach, but there was definitely a feeling that once they were unlocked, we can get loads of goodies. So I was like, right, I'll go and unlock it and get all the goodies. And then it's like, no, you unlock it and then there are goodies to be had by everybody.
By everybody, yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I've just wasted a third of the game doing that. So I felt like and I don't know, maybe like a bit more research or maybe sort of a bit more of a pointed teach, because Davey did a great teach of talking about what everything did, but it feels like a game that needs pointing. You need to be told what things do, I think, if you're playing with more experienced people. And I felt like I made assumptions about what I needed to do that I think the game does set you up for. The fact that these aliens are hidden suggests you need to go after them. And the fact that the techs feel like you almost feel like you want to invest in one tech was my feeling, when in fact I don't think you do. I think you want to invest a little bit in everything. So I invested hard down the blue, the computer route, thinking, well, I'll just invest in that and I'll go down that, because, and again, typically games that Davey want you to do that. They want you to invest in a route a little bit divergent, but ultimately and I don't think that game wants you to do that either. I think it wants you to put a bit of tech in everything. So between
I would agree with that. You kind of do need to be able to do a little bit of anything, everything. And sometimes you need to pivot, because I started doing a lot of signaling, but then everything I kept getting started pointing me towards, actually, I need to do a lot of moon landings. So I basically had to then pivot and started doing my landings instead. And because I had a lot of, I think basically, I know you spoke about where you go past your milestones and you allocate your pips to what VPs you're getting. Mine ended up being missions, and a lot of the missions I ended up getting were landing on moons. So I then had to pivot and go to moon landings. And I think sometimes in that game, that's what you need to do. Is you need to be able to pivot on I'd say a dime, but
Sixpence.
American. Yeah, tuppence.
I think you're right. And when I teach this to new players for our gaming group, is something I will be, have in mind, which is that I'm going to have to kind of lead you a little bit into, not this is what you should do, but don't fall into these traps.
Yeah, it's a bit like a Lacerda, right? Because certain Lacerdas have traps in them that when you're teaching that game, you tell them to avoid those traps, or you point them towards, look, you're going to need a bit of this, or you're going to need a bit, or don't do too much of it. And I think this is a game like that needs that, whereas certain other games of that weight, I don't think naturally need that. And that's not a problem, because certain games, their natural design mean that you need something like that in place. But I think, certainly if you're playing with more experienced people, that teach does need to be a little bit more pointed, because that was kind of how I felt. I felt like I'm going after aliens. I'm going to find these aliens. That's what I'm off to do. And doing that did nothing for me. And it just sort of set me up for failure.
Sometimes better to wait with your specimens until someone's revealed the alien and then spend your specimens as well, because you'll get more VPs. So that was something I probably didn't say. But then I was doing this.
You're 4 games in, right? So, and again, it's that thing of you kind of assume people might know a bit or whatever. And certainly we've talked about it, but I've not looked into it. So that's kind of by the by. It's that thing of you guys were going after your engine, and I thought, but if I'm going to get bonuses from unlocking it, I'll build my engine. Maybe I don't need to build my engine. I'll go and unlock the aliens, and then I'll get all the bonuses, and then I can build from there. And it's just not there. So I think you're
getting like your reward for unlocking or revealing the alien species is you'll get an alien card for each trace that
which is nothing.
You've got on there. Which it's helpful, but is it as good as having an engine set up? No, it's not. So you're going to need to. My advice on that is just dabble, put something out there, get involved, because you probably want the alien card because they are good. But
if you're the first to put in there, you get more VPs as well.
Yeah.
So
yes,
and you get a pop. So
it's not a lot of VPs in the grand. Like, it's great 5. If you can do it, but it's what, 3 or 4 VPs when you're like 100 and something. I do need to try this again now. I understand the expectation, because I think the puzzle in there is probably better than what I've experienced so far.
Yeah,
it was definitely one of my top 3 of Essen.
Same.
Nice,
it's great.
I called it a day. Sore, tired, and a little bit frustrated with the gaming experience. But you guys found more players to play with and played other things.
Yeah, so the guy that was watching us ended up joining us for a game. Paul kind of arrived and said, look at these games I've got. Do you want to punch them out? And then I think we started punching out Beyond the Horizon. And we just went, should we play it? So we were like, yeah, cool, we'll play it. So then another guy joined us as well, and we sat down and we played Beyond the Horizon, which is, if you don't know, Beyond the Sun's kind of predecessor. So, yeah, what can I say about Beyond the Horizon? So it for me, it has the same problems as Beyond the Sun, but apparently there is a retcon of these issues, which I'll go into in a bit. But I do enjoy the tech tree. The tech tree is really cool. Now, instead of having the space map to the side with planets, you've got exploration tiles that you kind of put out, because this is set in as a civilization game now instead. So rather than exploring the solar system, you're exploring kind of the planet, and you're building a civilization up, and you're settling cities and towns. So you've got kind of this whole new mechanic of you need to be able to settle, which you have to get a token for. And this is if you already know Beyond the Sun. If you don't, it's a tech tree game. I should probably start there. It's a tech tree game. You have worker placement slots at the bottom where you have to go out and you do your actions, placing your. It's now a hex cylinder.
Hex cylinder.
Hex cylinder. Yeah.
Was, mate.
So you put that out. You do your action. Which is at the start, getting tech. You've got tech trees out, and these techs do lots of different things. Some of them will help you put a tile out. Some of them will give you more population to do things. Some of them will increase your one of your trees, one of your progress. What's the names of the? I think it's like economy.
Military economy,
culture, and
probably, and something else.
Yes, one of them does population, one of them does money, and one of them does your just general abilities. Because now everyone's got asymmetric abilities, which I know they brought in with leaders for Beyond the Sun, but you didn't start with that. And the asymmetric abilities you unlock as you go down this tree at the bottom. I'll get onto that in a sec because that was one of my problems with the game, but we'll go on to JP's power shortly. And then by getting certain techs, it means you can unlock new ones. So it works like a branching system that branches off, and that's how you unlock more advanced techs. You also need to then have certain prerequisites to do those actions at the bottom, which is where the settlements come in. There's ways of breaking that with Overtech, which I don't think I ever even built a settlement to like right at the end of the game, because I ended up getting tech that broke some of the requirements, which helped me a lot. If those didn't come out, which is part of my issue, I was screwed that game. I would have lost really badly, but these techs did come out, which meant that I could get this level 3 tech without having to go much on the board, which a lot of other people were doing the board because their techs, because their faction abilities pointed them to do so. So JP had a faction ability where his tech was just cheaper. So the main core mechanic in the game was cheaper. And for me, that felt very imbalanced because it was easier to use. I should probably say that rather than imbalanced, because I'm sure they've play tested these things. It felt a lot easier for them to settle into. For your first game, having someone with that ability where they just go, stuff's just cheaper. Mine was the second most powerful, and I did come second, in my opinion, for a starter into this game.
10 points behind.
Sorry?
You were 10 points behind. I just want to note this.
Yeah, 10 points behind. But mine was, I can basically go up any track rather than have to go up so I can choose what track I go up when I go up a track. And then the two guys we played with, they had basically board abilities. One of them was when he did a military action, I think he got an extra pop or something or other. And I didn't even really know their actions because they were doing the board and I was not focused on that whatsoever. I did that, as I said, about 2 or 3 times in the whole game. Mm-hmm. So it was nice knowing that you could focus on one and not the other, because I don't think they were too far behind in the end. But my problems with the game, the game of Beyond the Sun as well, is it dictates on what cards are pulled. And sometimes that can be very RNG and very random, and you don't know. So I'm going down this strategy this game. I go across, and if I had chosen to go down the tech strategy and none of the extra tech cards came out, so I couldn't do a level 3 or level 4, my game was screwed. That was my game over, because it's kind of a race, that game. It is tempo based.
It is, yeah.
That would have been my game over. Luckily, it did come out, which meant that I could keep the tempo up, and I also had one which meant I could completely ignore prerequisites and put another tech out. Beautiful. That is the only reason I got as far as I did in that game. But I've had games of Beyond the Sun where I've been like, I'm going to do this strategy now, and I've started it. None of those cards have come up. They've come up at the top. Someone else has pulled them. They're along that tree. My game's over. And I know my game's over. There is a variation where JP was saying where you can see, it's like a shop, mm-hmm. where you can see it. And for me, personally, I think that would improve the game tenfold, because then I can go, I know that card's going to come out. I want to rush that card there. Or I know that card's going to come out. I can't do that strategy. Let's do this instead.
Yeah, just very quickly. So when in Beyond the Sun base rules and Beyond the Horizon only rules, I think, is that when you research, you draw, you basically pick what color is coming from the predecessor, and then you basically draw out from the deck 2 of that color. 2 of that where that color exists, and then you pick one to put in. So you just a chance of the first 2 that you find in that deck, that's your choice. Whereas this other variant, which I think only exists in Beyond the Sun, and I think you could implement this in Beyond the Horizon, is literally you just have, I think it's a shop of 3 of each of the techs. You kind of see and you can plan against it. So it's a bit more deterministic. I wouldn't say it's fully deterministic, but it's definitely more because you have...
No, but it gives you more choice and more
it.
decision space, I think, which is my only problem with the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why people still enjoy that, because the tech tree is really cool, and maybe we'll be proved wrong and that these military factions are actually really strong with how you play the military board, because this was our first play.
Yeah.
So I will stress that this was our first play, but from what I've seen and heard of people talking about it, the faction JP was the easiest for everyone to pick up through their first play. So they won a lot more on their first game. And that's because it's easy, isn't it? You can just be like, my tech's cheaper and it's easy to play with, rather than have maybe the military side of things. Because mine was easy to play with as well. As I said, mine was very straightforward, whereas they had ones which probably were a lot harder to get the reward or benefit from. Because the late game, they started to come into the game. They started scoring a lot more points than us towards the late game. But it's a tempo game. The game ended.
Yeah.
So if they could get that engine going earlier or get there earlier, will that actually score more points? I don't know. I'd have to play a lot more of it. And I'm not sure if they don't sort the tech deck out, which is my problem, not the necessarily the faction problem. That's my problem with it. If they don't sort that out, then I probably wouldn't play it again.
Yeah. I think for me, like I say, my power and my government power was that I could spend from my hourglasses, and the hourglasses are like your scientists basically in Beyond the Sun. And you can basically spend them directly from your board rather than having to unlock them into your supply and then use them and spend them. So I could literally just bypass that step, which it felt very powerful. So that just told me, invest into that. But then I have played Beyond the Sun a lot of times, so I kind of know the system well. But I'm not saying that's the reason why I won, but it's familiar territory to me. I can just lean into that game no problem. But my thoughts on the game, actually, I was keen to play this game because I wanted to see if it replaces Beyond the Sun for me, and it does not for me at all. And actually, even though I kind of won that game, I didn't super enjoy it. I was kind of like, there's things that it's doing that are fiddly. I think the area map, whilst it's doing something different, and actually there's a lot more points in that map now than there is in the the ships and planets from the base Beyond the Sun. It's fiddly as anything. So you kind of putting these little hourglasses on, and then you put in a little chit on top of it, which is then a settler or a soldier. And then you're upgrading these chips throughout, and you might flip it over or replace it, and then you're knocking it off and you're knocking other people's off, and it's just, I don't know, it just seems fiddly. And because the challenge of board layout in that game is the tech tree board is huge on both games, Beyond the Sun and Beyond the Horizon, then naturally that board sits in the middle, and then the area bit always sits at one end of the table. It has to sit either one end or the other end. Depending on where you're sitting, it's hard for you to see. It always is. So it's kind of like, oh, there's some stuff going over there. I have to stand up and have a look. And I think now they're putting more prominence into that area, and it feels like, there's more VPs to squeeze out of that area. It just, I didn't like the fact that it is a bit more fiddly, and I think I just prefer the cleaner nature of Beyond the Sun, which is ships moving around planets, jumping and doing what you need to. It's just easier to see. About all the facts.
I just realised we're in a really weird layout on that table as well, because it was a really long table. It was like a bar table, a really long table, and there was three of us one side, and one of the guys was opposite.
Yeah,
I just realised that. I didn't really think about it while we were playing, but we were in a really weird layout as well, because the military board would have been miles away for you.
Exactly,
it was three people deep down the other side. I can't
see what was going on, and like in Beyond the Sun, it's all right. It's not it's not a bigger deal because it's a planet, and I can quickly look at it, and on there is a bonus. Right, I've got that in my memory. I know what I'm going for, so I don't have to sit right next to that board. But in this one, because each hex has an ability of, if you go and settle in it, or if you fortify it, or if you do something, it's like the VPs are really small. The bonuses you're getting is hot. You have to physically get up and have a look, and it's just, I was quite glad my power was nothing to do with that board, because it was just easy for me to just sit where I was sat and did what I did. But no, I think there are things they've cleaned up in the system, which I liked. And there's just things that I just think they've added a lot of faff. If I'm being honest, they've added a lot more faff in the game than I care for that kind of style and weight of game. And because I've got Leaders of New Dawn with Beyond the Sun, I just think that does it better. I just think the way that they add asymmetry into the game, it's better. And because you draft those powers and they're not stupidly game breaking, or they don't feel like they're good, but they're not like, oh, you can get this whole thing super cheap. Not for me, which is good because it answered the question I needed to answer. Is, do I need to buy this and replace it? And I don't. So there we go.
Yeah, I did like the fact that you did have more to do on your turn, because you do your main action. You then have your build action. So you have a tile and you can then build that out if you are able. And then you have you pick your income. And I did like that little build action to start with. When we started the game, I was like, oh, cool. It means I get to do other little things. And some of the tiles have real cool things that you do. But JP is right. It's fiddly. They should have had a little lip on your pop so you can fit the chit into the top and it wouldn't slide off. Because someone knocks the table, everyone's screwed, really.
The hourglasses fall over and the chits go everywhere. What level? Was that a 2? Was that 4? Was that 3? I don't know. So it definitely has some glaring issues,
but I will play it again, and hopefully will be interesting to see what people say about it when they've got more plays under the belt. So I'm going to keep my eye on it anyway.
Fair enough. So I think that was Saturday, right? I think we played that and thought, ooh, tired now, get to bed.
Saturday night, yeah.
Saturday night.
So, and that moves us on to Sunday, which was basically JP's only day to actually do the press pass thingy and go round before opening. So I know I'd done it every morning. I think, Davey, you'd done it a couple of mornings and you'd said, you know what, I've kind of seen what I need to see. I'll come in a little bit later. So me and JP went round the halls and just I'd put together that sort of last moment, what haven't I looked at list. And JP just had his entire list of everything he hadn't got to look at on previous days, basically. And it is, when you get in there before the 10 o'clock, I think, as Davey said, it's so much easier just to check out certain stalls and certain games before 10 o'clock with these press passes. It's miraculously easier. Like, I don't mind wandering around and sort of having a peer over people and having a cheeky listening to other people's teachers and all that. I'm perfectly happy with that. But it is just easier to go around when the hall has got a tenth of the people in it, if that. And just getting to have a look at just stalls you want to see and kind of go, okay, well, what's this about? I know there's no demo of it, but I get to see the board and I can have a bit more of a closer inspection without feeling like I'm about to be jostled or given a sales pitch sometimes. Most of them aren't very predatory with their sales pitches, but certainly some of the smaller ones can be. They can be a little bit, it's a bit like shopping in a clothes store. I don't need someone to come over to me 5 times and ask me if I need a hand with anything. Just let me browse and I can see you're there. I'll come and speak to you, right? And I get this is people's livelihoods and all that, but sometimes...
Come dress me in the changing room.
Yeah. What?
Like what they're going to help with, really, in the clothing store.
Yeah.
You look good in that, sir.
It's really odd. What are you shopping for today? Well, I'm in the shoe section, so I'm shopping for shoes, funnily enough. So we didn't have any...
Throw a shoe at him. That's what you should do next time.
Who throws a shoe? Who throws a shoe?
So we didn't have any of that, right? So we had a bit of a wander around and we had a look at a few things, most of which were just that. I just wanted to have a look, and JP was like, I just want to have a look. And then JP said, look, there's one I really want to go and have a look at. And it's in the same place as Planter Nubo, and I think it's the same designer, Planter Nubo.
Well, one of designers,
game builders. And I'll be honest, I switched off fairly quickly because Planter Nubo holds no interest for me as a puzzle, as a game, or anything like that. So he said, it's a game called Suna Valo, come and join, and all this kind of stuff. So we went over and had a look. I thought, actually, that looks a bit better, a bit more me than Planter. Bet is probably not the right word, but certainly more my kind of puzzle than Planter Nubo. Let's see if we can play a game. So JP, do you want to talk us through Suna Valo?
Yeah, so Suna Valo, like I said, this is probably another one I was keen to check out. And it's a 2-player only game, so it's always like 2-player only, is this going to be for me? But really set in the same solarpunk universe as Plantanubo. So it's kind of like this futuristic but agricultural vision of where you've got floating islands where there's farms in the, literally on these islands up in the sky, and lots of robots like farming and things like that. So it's quite quaint and weird, and I dig it, and I like it in Plantanubo. It's just a very different thematics that's been put on here. But really, it's a game of you've kind of got your board in front of you, and it looks like a big like N, I suppose is the best way to kind of highlight. And on the left side, you've got things like actions that you can kind of do, market and buy certain resources at cost of sunstones. I think they're called sunstones, something like that. Anyway, it's a kind of currency in the game. Looks like a stone. Energy stones, I think that's what it was. And on the right, you've got a big track where a robot is, and there's a big gear cog that you can kind of move up and get additional benefits and things like that.
There wasn't just one cog; there was two cogs. So
there was.
The left-hand side of the two cogs was a multiplier, and then the right was points.
Yeah,
which I also found, and they're blocked, which I'm sure you'll get into in a second. But they're blocked, so as you go up either one, you're going to have to unblock what you need to get to.
Yeah.
And I loved that idea of I could go up one track,
but it's time
and just get all the points. There's no point going up the multiplier if you've only got 1 point. But you could do a mix of both, or you could probably just rocket up that right hand track, I reckon, which is just pure points. Anyway,
it's fine.
I'll leave you to it, but I found that bit great.
And kind of in the middle of your board, your horizontal piece, which kind of sits at the top, is your kind of engine, or the best way of calling it. So you've got different resources from, I don't know what, I can't even remember what they are, like eggs and, You
had eggs and wool, you had lily pads.
Lily pads.
Something orange, I can't even think what they were.
Yeah.
I think it might have been fruit as well. And then you had...
An orange?
It might have been.
I can't remember. It was just an orange token, but I remember it being next to the lily pads, and you had like a lavender or a flower of some type in like bluey purple.
Exactly. Resources.
They were just resources, weren't they? But they were very, again, quaint.
Yeah.
Things you don't see often in kind of...
No.
Maybe you see chickens a bit, but you don't tend to see these other resources in games.
So on these resources, you have these kind of crates that sit on there. So that's telling you can hold one of that resource within that crate. So certain ones obviously have multiple crates, and you can put multiple resources in. But again, you're limited on what you can hold. But the premise of the game, really, and this is the bit that I found absolutely kind of genius, and just the way this works as a 2-player game, is it's all around these cards. So there's the main board that kind of sits off, and on there's a bunch of cards, and all separated into, I think, 3 different eras, so that you kind of progress through the game. And also on that main board, you've got orders that on these floating islands that you can fulfill for goodies and things, which you need your drones to kind of airdrop these resources over. And also at the bottom, you've got similarly kind of orders that you can kind of send your ships to as well to kind of fulfill those things. But at the start of the game, you kind of have a bunch of cards that will sit at the top of your board, and each player, and then you can allocate your resources that you have on those cards as basically what the cost is of those cards if your opponent wants to buy them. So you kind of have a choice on your turn, which is, right, I want to get a card, right? And that card could be one of the various different colours. If you imagine your main board section into columns, so you've kind of got orange, green, blue, brown, and grey, and whatever. You can kind of purchase one of the cards from the main board, which might be, it costs 2, and then depending on its position is +1, so it's 3. You need to spend 3 resources to get that card. So you can get it from the direct board and then slot it into your engine, and then you run your column, and you kind of go, right, I get that thing, get this thing, get this thing. So the more cards you kind of have in that column, the more goodies you're going to be getting and doing cool stuff. But what I really liked is that, let's say Adrian has a bunch of cards on there, and he's put a green little sprout thing. And I'm like, actually, I really want that card. And if I buy that off Adrian, I basically have to pay him an extra sprout thing. And now he gets 2 sprouts back into his resources, and I get the card. Happy days. But also, if I wanted to buy one of my own cards, I've already allocated the cost of it, so I can take that card and discard the resource that's sat on there and put that into my engine as well. So you have this little weird game of, I really want that card that's in front of me, so I'm going to, price it out of the market. So Adrian really, if he really wants it, he's going to have to really pay for it and put 3 things, because you can kind of over set the price and I'm going to put 3 resources on it, and if he really wants it, off you go, pal. And I also see what resources he has, so I kind of know what he's got and what he doesn't have, and therefore I can allocate things accordingly. So you have this little market between you. That's really cool. One of the things is that when you when you get your cards, and if you get a row of all of the colours, you get some Billy bonuses off that as well, which can be VPs and or other stuff. But you can kind of run the row there. But one of those columns is around drones, so that's how you then do your air dropping and air shipping to different things. But the idea is that if you're airdropping to the cards at the top of the main board, you get to put a barrel onto that card, and that barrel comes from your main board. And there's multiple barrels in different locations, so the one you remove will give you benefits. So as Adrian mentioned, the bot track, some of the things are blocked by barrels, and therefore if you remove that, you've removed the blocker, and off you go. You can kind of get that cog higher. Or it might be that you're giving a bonus to your market action, making it a better ratio, or whatever it might be. You also got chests on your main board that you can kind of do a similar thing, because one of the cards you get in your columns is kind of similar, has like orders on there as well that you can kind of airdrop into there, and you can put chests on there. Does a similar vibe really, but in different locations. And it's, for me, like the game just flowed like instantly. The guy who taught it, again, we kind of mentioned it earlier, he was German, and he said the same thing, like English is not my proficient language, and he nailed the teach.
And
like,
then delivered one of the best teaches of a game like that I've had in a long time. Like, absolutely nailed it. There's quite a bit going on in this, because there's basically, you're building 2 engines as well as trying to get your victory points, and there's a couple of different ways of doing that. So there is a fair chunk going on in this game for what actually is quite a smooth and simple engine, right? But there's a little bit of rules overhead, which normally I'm not a big fan of, but he delivered it in such a clean way that made sense. I was like, man, he's got this nailed in. And and
it just flowed back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. We played the first era, because he said, look, demos to era 1, you'll get to see it and you'll know what the game is. And I was like, I just want to finish this now. I think it's fair to say I'm being fairly excitable right now. This is my game of Essen, and it's a shame that it's 2 players, because I don't get to play very specific. I've played 2-player games a lot, but normally they're sort of 1 to 4 player games, and I'm learning to teach, and I'll play it at 2-player sort of thing. It's very rare. But as you say, once you've bought something from someone's shop, they get to replace it, and they get to reseed the cost of it, because you're basically buying it in advance, right? So at any time, there's always, I want to say, 3 cards above your shop. And whether you buy your opponent's, whether you buy one of your own that you've already prepaid for, therefore it's kind of free at this point. You've paid for it to be in your shop. If you take it from your shop, it's free. If someone else takes it from your shop, they've got to pay you, and you get what you paid for it. So you get double bubble. So it will be free then.
But then, as you say, there was times when I deliberately seeded things so you couldn't nick them. There were times when I seeded things because I thought you might want them, and I wanted lots of stuff. There's times I bought stuff off of you because I knew you didn't have the boxes to hold it. So I was going to give you all these cubes, and you were going to have to make the difficult choice of
in the bin.
Which cubes do I hold on to, and which do I get rid of? And as you say, you can have up to 3. You can have as many as you want in the column, if I remember correctly, but you only get bonuses from having the first 3 entire rows filled.
Yes, correct.
So it's kind of pushing you to do a fair chunk in one column maybe, but try and get as many as you can in multiple columns, and then trigger that bit. And then you're building that engine, which is interesting of itself. But at the same time, you're building this engine of, well, if I put this boat down, it gives me an income, an extra bit in the income step. Or as you say, it makes market cheaper, or it unlocks my cogs from moving on. So you're kind of building this engine and this reward system. And it was great. It was smooth. I knew what I was once I'd got my head around that first round. It wasn't even first era. It was just the first round. I was totally immersed in this puzzle and wanting to, as I say, seed the card with my own tokens, in the shop to say, well, this is going to cost you 2 of these. Or there was one where I didn't care if you got a bot because it was too early for you to run your bot and it was a 0 cost. So I just put nothing on it. And it's like, yeah, you can have it. You're not going to want it. And I can see you're not going to want it. So why do I care about bumping the cost up? Which I did on a couple of times. I was like, I don't want you having this card. Yeah. It's going to have 3 cubes on it. I don't need these cubes. You can't afford this combination. It's done, sort of thing. This is now going to be mine when I want it. And I can see in advance when you're going to be able to get those things. And I'm so glad you dragged me over to that shop, because it was over to that stand to play Suna Valo, because it was such an exciting puzzle that I cannot wait. It was sold out, and I was gutted that it was sold out. Because
Sunday.
I think it's right, Sunday on a game that I think actually had a bit of buzz. I just ignored it because it was part of the Plant and Noob thing, and it hadn't interested me there. And it's definitely the highlight of what have I missed. What did I not bring back that I absolutely would have wanted to?
Yeah, likewise. I think it was my favourite demo and experience of Essen. Yeah. I didn't say I wrote it off. I just wasn't super interested in it. I was intrigued by it, but I wasn't like, I have to play and get this game. But as soon as I played it, I was like, oh man, this is still rattling out. Even now, like a week later, this game is rattling around in my brain going, I want a copy of this. Yeah. And now absolutely. I know I cannot get a copy of this game. And you're probably thinking, listeners, like, yeah, thanks for hyping this up, guys, because now we can't get a copy of this game. Because I think it was German only. I mean, it's language independent, so that's good. And the English rules are available, but good luck finding a copy, guys. I don't know if we're going to get one for a while, but it's definitely, as soon as it's available, I'm having it, and I'm sure you are, Adrian, as well. But it's brilliant. Yeah.
And then, absolutely. I went online and sort of tried to see how much it was, and it's like pre-orders only in Germany at the moment at silly money sort of thing. So, absolutely gutted to have missed out on that. But we got what I'm going to call our usual Essen experience at the moment, which is they thought we were from Gay Sauna when we walked over. Yeah. So
it didn't help because we were holding hands.
Yeah,
so,
and
that didn't help.
For those who don't, we go and listen to our last year's episode. We actually went and played Gay Sauna last year, or a few of us did. They have the same synthwave sort of blue and pink Tron colours that we have for our podcast logo, that we didn't realise when we went out to Essen last year. Loads of people stopped us and said, oh, I thought you were from Gay Sauna. No, we're a podcast. Just got a very similar symbol. And I'd got away with it so far. I'd had one person in that entire weekend like offhand mention it as you randomly have got the same colours, and to then get to the Sunday and then the person on the stand be like, oh, I just assumed you were Gay Sauna. I was like, yeah, we got this a lot last year as well.
Thank you. Just remembered that
unfortunate lineup of our similarity in colours and that for our logo. But it was an interesting one. It just made me chuckle because it reminded me of the previous year.
We had a laugh. They were good. The game builders, they were good fun. Even the ladies on the stand, we had a good chat with afterwards. And they're very kind and good fun. And they helped us get on that demo pretty much dead on 10. So good experience, great game. Gutted I haven't got it.
And then we wandered over to
Mindclash Games, his home from home.
Spent all week there pretty much.
And we played a demo of their new sort of game that's coming out. It's on Kickstarter now, soon.
November the 19th.
November the 19th. There we go. It's which is Revenant. And we also got the chance to speak to Alan, who is the designer of Revenant. He gave us a nice little interview about what it's all about. So we're going to play that now for you before we talk about our demo experience.
Hi, it's JP from the Whose Turn Is It Anyway podcast, and I'm here with Alan Coakley, who's the new designer for the very new game Revenant, which is set in the Voidfall universe. So, for anyone that's not heard of Revenant, what is it? What's it all about?
Yeah, Revenant is the story is basically about a fleet of the houses from the Voidfall universe. The big enemy has just broken through, and then they fly away with the Revenant, the big flagship in the middle, to escape with secret data that may save the human race.
Oh, okay.
Of course, they get attacked by the Voidborn all the time. So the game is a worker placement game. Each player plays a captain in the fleet, and yes, they all try and protect the fleet, but at the end of the day, they're also very ambitious captains, and they want to get up in the hierarchy and become well established with all the houses. So it's about getting a lot of influence with the houses. And you have a ship, and you build up your ship, you install weapons, you play cards to upgrade your crew and all that stuff.
Okay, so was it always kind of designed in the Voidfall universe at the start, or did you have a kind of different theme in mind when you started? Because that's how often it goes, right?
I had a different theme, but it's very close, right?
Okay.
So originally the concept was, so it was a space game. So back in 2020, I've been designing lots of games, and am I right? But so you come up with ideas, and how do you come up with an idea? And it kind of started with, what if I have worker spaces that disappear, and the players can kind of control which ones disappear. And then I had to come up with, what would that look like? What would the theme be? And a fleet of spaceships just made sense. And the original game was basically called Space Caravan, which is basically like a fleet flying through space, right? And then I pitched to Mindclash, and Voidfall hadn't come out, so I was basically, they were basically, we have this game, this might fit, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So that's how it happened.
Okay. So what sort of complexity rating is it? Like, who's this kind of game for? Voidfall is very heavy. Is this similar weight? Or?
Much lower.
Okay.
I would say the first time you play it, just like Voidfall, there's a lot of icons, and we try and make the playground language independent. So everyone kind of needs to learn that. But once you get it, it's basically you have a captain and two cadets. So you place one of your workers, and then you play a card. That's your turn, right? So that's pretty straightforward. And everyone who kind of played it a few turns, they kind of get it. I've heard someone saying it's about the same as Anachrony, because it's another Mindclash game. And someone saying it's about 2 point or 3 point something on the scale of BGG. I don't really get those skills. But I know Voidfall is up on the 5 or something. It's much lower in complexity.
Okay. So for the people at home or people listening, when can they get their hands on this?
So it's whoa.
That was a leading question.
So there's a Kickstarter. The page is up. There's nothing in there yet, but it's kind of a pre-base. So it's launching on November 19th. And there's going to be added content. We also have a BGG page where we're starting to have some images up there. I just saw one of the players from the first day. She had some great photos of the prototype, and the deluxe version has minis and all that. And I saw it for the first time with all of that great stuff printed here Thursday when we started.
But that was nice.
like, that's my game.
That's your baby.
Exactly.
Well, great stuff. Well, we're going to go and play a demo of it right now, so we'll be telling everybody what our thoughts are on the episode. So thank you very much for talking to us, Alan. It's been great. Thank you very much.
So you've heard there from JP and Alan a little bit about Revenant, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of a sort of an idea of what the game is about. But it's Battlestar Galactica, the Euro game, right? I know we probably dance around this a little bit, but you are in space running from aliens, set in the Voidfall universe. So when I originally heard Voidfall, I'm not that interested in playing the game. I do need to play it, but it's not really up on my list. I was like, and then it was like, oh, by the way, you are a ship with your surrounding like little ships that are all worker placement spots, and you are running away from an alien menace, and you'll have to do jumps and stuff like that. I was like, oh, it's a Euro Battlestar Galactica game. Love it. Love the theme straight off. And there's not like Cylon bluffing who's the Cylon, but you have your preferences of which houses you prefer. And they're going to be point scoring at the end of the game, but they're hidden objectives. And the worker placement spaces all belong to a house. And you can destroy, not you personally, but you can affect which ones are going to take more damage of these ships. And so it does kind of destroy and also weaken the points of these houses. And then later on, you can build more ships belonging to those houses and bring them back in. The ones that are destroyed, you can kind of rebuild them. But it gives you this, it's not hidden traitor in that true respect, but it does give you this kind of who's going after what almost like War of Whispers style game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, where it's like who's got what allegiance. You can kind of take some guesses, but you can draw more cards as the game goes on, so you can have multiple allegiances as well. But there's very much,
and you can bin cards for resources,
and you can bin the cards for resources. Or I had a rule as the politician, because you've all kind of got different roles. And so as a politician, I could just push myself up in tracks instead of taking cards and stuff like that. With actually, I think that might have been a card that I found. I can't remember now. But there's certainly ways as a politician for me to manipulate that track. But the main game itself is you have 3 workers, which these workers you can upgrade. So you upgrade the individual workers, or 2 of them. The third one is your commander, who has a commander ability, and those are asymmetric based on what type of character you have. So there was politician, science, commander, and scout.
I think so. I didn't know what the one that was off completely diagonally opposite for me.
Yeah, he was
scientist.
He was trying to go down to the planets. So there's kind of planets you can explore.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So he was a scout or a researcher or something like that.
Yeah.
And so your commander and the ability on your boards also kind of are a bit more asymmetric. So you can do that, and then you can also build up like your ship's inventory, if that makes sense, of kind of not inventory, but you can build up your ship as general abilities. I can't think what the term was. The box ones across the top.
Oh yeah, they were like were they items?
They might have been items, but they built up that. So you could upgrade your pilots, you could upgrade your kind of inventory as well. And then there was a bit along the bottom, which was to do with of your board, which is there is a corruption mechanic in the game. So if you visit a worker placement space that's corrupt, you gain corruption, and it limits the amount of resources you can hold on to, and it limits your additional free action. So after your main action, you get a free action, and if there's corruption on the space that is that is on that additional action, you can't use it. So it added this really interesting mechanic of, do I go to the corrupt ship and risk the corruption because it limits my options? How much of that do I do? How much resource do I need to hold on to? And then, all of the ships around the main one offer you a different worker placement spot. There wasn't really any repeats out there.
Sometimes you did want corruption as well, though, because when you clear it, you fill up and you can gain data from clearing it. You get rewarded for clearing it off of your board, which the scientist was good at.
There was and then there's smaller ships that you can land on planets, or they're fighters that you send out to go and destroy the alien invasion, the alien menace, and you have your own coloured frigates that again can do those things. They can shoot, they can put up shields and stuff like that as well. But interestingly, if your frigate is in the area, you can decide which ship gets damaged first, or if there's no one in the area and you're the nearest, if you're higher up on this kind of accolade, I can't think what they called it, reputation sort of board.
It's like a tactical track. I forget the name of it.
If you're higher up on that, you get to decide where the damage goes.
Wasn't it strategic?
I can't remember, but it's it's a track that basically sort of says you've got tactical advantage. You can decide where the damage goes on ships, so you have more choice. So on which of those sort of placements and which of those houses have their ship destroyed.
That's huge.
It's much bigger than I thought it was going to be, and sometimes there was a reason to move a ship, not really to do anything, just because you wanted to make a choice of like, I need to keep this ship alive. Like, this is my worker placement spot. I need next round, next phase, but also it's one that my house wants or whatever. I need to keep this ship alive. And you might think, well, if worker placement spots are being destroyed, surely that limits options, and it does, but there's always like a secondary way to get something or to do something. And as I said, you can rebuild ships. And there were ships that don't start on the board that are like a tertiary ship that don't really do much. They just add to the house value that you can bring in as well. So if you're not like, sod these worker placement spots that I needed, I could just up the houses, you can bring in this tertiary one as well. So you can do all of that. You can fix ships, you can gain resources, you can heal corruption. So corruption, when you heal it, gives you a benefit that gets you towards getting these cards that gives you the house benefits. When you also go down and visit planets, when you send the landers down to visit planets, they give you cubes on a different it's just a card that gives you other ability. Like, so when you visit planets, you can choose to do a corrupt version or a non-corrupt version that give you different bonuses. And when you go down to a planet, you take the little cube there, and that also builds up to being able to draw more of these cards. And those cards really are the main way of scoring victory points, right?
Yeah.
And it's fair to say, I think that's, how do you feel? Does that cover the rules off mostly?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think the other point is that you get to jump. Now, if you don't jump often, you're going to be swarmed so quickly so you, at the end of the round, you roll a dice, and if there's too many ships in there, you deduct one from the value of the dice, and you can only have so many maximum, I think, in each space. But you roll this dice, and oh my god, these aliens, the Voidborn. Oh, I did remember that. Good, considering I don't play Voidfall. The Voidborn were so quick. It was my one thought of, by the end of, was it 2 turns?
Yeah, 2
Our
rounds,
main ship in the center was nearly destroyed.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it too much? I don't know. It was everything else about this entire puzzle I loved. I genuinely thought, I think this might be after Tricarion, this might be my second place Mindclash game, based just on the demo. I need to play a bit more of it, obviously, before I firmly put it there, but there's a good chance, because I loved so much of this puzzle. But those Voidborn were horrific. Like, they turned up in such numbers after the jump, before the jump, and like they do the damage, then you jump, loads more turned up. I was like, I don't see how we would get through this game, because there were just that many of them there. It was the only one sort of question I've got on that. And again, it's a prototype. They'll be developing it. I'm sure they'll take feedback. There were a couple of other niggles with how information was displayed, or like what components they used. We had the deluxe one with the ships sat in it, like a 3D ship, and you couldn't see the worker placement spot
on the other side.
On the other side, because there's kind of each worker placement spot actually has 2 options of what you could do, apart from one of them, which is just repeat another action. That's on both sides of one. But each of these ships had 2 potential actions off for placing one worker there. And I couldn't see half the actions. JP couldn't on the other side of the board. We had to keep asking each other. But they have said they've noted that, and they're looking at how to fix it. There are a couple of other bits and pieces on there, but the big bit was we didn't get... I know we're just learning the game, but if on your first experience, you can't even get 2 turns into it. Was it 2 turns, 3 turns into it without having your ship? We had 1 damage spot left on the main middle ship. It was huge. It just felt a bit...
I think on that point, I was the commander, so my main abilities were I could destroy more things. I get better utility on basically destroying Voidborn. I think I was the only one doing it from memory. So
I did it a few times.
Did you do it okay?
I put some shields down and I destroyed a few things.
Yeah. So I think
Scout also got involved. He started doing some after, but that was after it escalated to that point. Yeah. So I think maybe if we had handled it better to start with, it probably wouldn't have been as bad. But I definitely didn't know the repercussions of being like, I'm the scientist, I'm just going to upgrade my stuff. And then all this bad stuff happened, and I went, oh, all my stuff's nearly dead that I've got the cards for. I was like, this has definitely been a game that the more I thought about it, the more I enjoyed it, which is strange, because at the time I had a headache and it was quite hard for me to take it in at that exact point. But the more I thought about it afterwards, I've been like, oh, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And the uniqueness of ships coming out and being your workers' spots being blown up because you didn't manage them well enough it's a unique design space. And it's definitely one that you can play around with.
If you decide that actually the ships we all don't collectively care on, and it's not really a decision, is it? But it's a thought process where we've all decided, we don't care about this house. If you get rid of the one that, for instance, heals ships or gets rid of corruption or stuff like that, you're in trouble. Like, it doesn't matter about your house allegiance. You are in trouble because you've now got to spend time rebuilding that ship or finding other ways to get rid of corruption, healing things, that kind of stuff.
Which doesn't actually help your VP game, but it helps the game, and you get into the end.
Yeah. And it's just
interesting.
There's lots of these little decisions that, again, you're not going to speak about necessarily as a group until you've realised it's probably a problem, and then you'll have to start speaking about it. And I think that thematically brings forward that sort of Battlestar Galactica of people only really care about the things that directly impact them. And things only start directly impacting them once they've lost certain abilities and ships and stuff like that. And you're like, oh no, it's not just about points, it's about the worker placement space and stuff like that. Any other thoughts from you guys on Revenant?
No, I think similar to Davey, actually. Like I it wasn't like my first game of Voidfall where I went, wow. Like honestly, I went, wow, this is hit the notes for me. So I didn't get that initial bang, this is the best thing ever kind of experience, but I haven't experienced it. So I think I have to caveat that with I haven't experienced the game, and we had a demo of it. Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued to see more of it and experience more of it and play more of it because I love Mindclash, as we know. So I'd imagine it sits nicely within their catalogue. But I kind of want a full game experience of it, and then I'll kind of reserve my judgment of it because, I did not enjoy it, but I wasn't super blown away from my first taste of it straight away. I don't know why. I can't explain why that is. I think it might have been because I was tired on a Sunday and it was the last day of Essen, and maybe that had something to do with it. But
I think not seeing the outcome for all of the stuff that you've done, building up towards as well. Like that is a game where you're building up your VPs and you're building up this engine and you're doing these cool things, and the payoff's going to be at the end.
Oh yeah.
And when you then it all revealed, there's going to be, it's probably a massive moment within the game where you're like, oh, you're going for that faction. I was pushing this faction, and I think seeing that payoff and getting a full playthrough is definitely going to elevate the game for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be a chunky boy because we had a 2-hour demo, or just short of, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and in that there was about a 40-minute teach.
Yes.
And okay, there was, so the gentleman who joined us didn't speak great English. His wife sort of spoke better English, so there was some translation going on and bits and pieces there. But even then, I still think it didn't add too much time onto the amount of time the teach took. So I reckon you're looking at a half-hour teach on that game and 2 to 3 hours playtime minimum.
Yeah, easy.
So that we were never in a demo, let's face it, going to get much of the experience. But yeah, I think counter to you guys are typically the Mindclash fans, and sort of seem to love everything that comes out for them. I'm lukewarm on a lot of their games. I enjoy a couple of them, but not blown away by all of them. And yet I came away from this thinking this could be high up there for me.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I need to play, like you, I need to play more of it to see. I especially feel like they might need to put in like an introductory version of the game, because I think it'd be too easy, like Davey said, to not realise the importance of shooting down some ships and protecting stuff. And you'd get an hour and a half into a game, you'd all blow up and you'd be like, well, that was a bit rubbish. So I feel like it needs a basics rule or an intro rule on how you populate those things to make it a bit nicer, and then you can move on to the nastier version.
Yeah, of course, they do a little tutorial section where you fight a little amount of ships, and then straight afterwards you all warp, and then that's when the real game begins.
Yeah, it's like you need a round of the game, like 25% of the game, to then understand how that whole thing works. And we made the assumption that, well, if we jump, we'll jump before they fight you. No, you jump after they fight you. It's like, okay. So that didn't click. And actually, when you look at the main board or the board that tracks the rounds, it's obvious because it's there. It's on there. It literally tells you the order of events and what's going to happen. That board
was busy though.
Yeah,
it did say everything on it, but it was busy and cluttered, and some things were like quite pointed on. It's like, this first thing happens, but it's then bannered across the top of the board, and then the second thing's happen, but actually it's a tiny little box, and that there was some. I found that hard to read to start with. Once we got into it, I thought it was all right, but I
did not a finished design space it's either. So that could be worked on. I mean, when you look at it, you could think this is a finished game because it looked that well produced.
But it probably will change. It will no doubt change. Voidfall did, and for me, the obviously it's an Atoll UI design, so it's very, very familiar to me and Davey, no doubt, because it's Voidfall. A lot of the resources are the same. It's like I can tell that's a science, I can tell that's an energy, I can tell this is this, and just the way that it's laid out it makes sense because I've experienced it in that other game. But I completely get your point. If you've not experienced the Voidfall games at all, even though this is absolutely nothing like that game whatsoever, but from a look and feel visual, it might be a bit ooh.
But to be honest with you, most of it, having not played Voidfall, what the different resources were and why you had them, and kind of how you plugged in your cards and all that lot, were instinctively pretty good.
Yeah,
it was, as I say, the main couple of bits was those 3D ships blocking things was just not great, and the turn board, the board turn sort of thing was a little bit messy. Like, again, I could read it. Once I knew what I was looking at, I could read it quite easily. It was just the fact that it's messy. Like the way it was put into the board was a bit messy, but no, all good on that point. So yes, I think that's our thoughts on Revenant. So we walked around the halls a little bit more. You guys found a game, which we'd actually heard about from Slicker Drips. I was not really in the more demoing mood, so I had a bit of a wander and picked up my last purchase of the convention, which was Palaces of Carrara. It's a game I've played before. Game Brewers were closing down. I was really hoping they'd put Bone Wars into the sale, but everything else got up to 50% off sort of thing, or sort of similar amounts off. When I first played Palaces of Carrara, I wasn't blown away. It was a nice puzzle, but I wasn't blown away, but then found out there's an advanced version of the rules that looks more interesting. And I thought, you know what, for €20, I'll give it a punt. It'd been we've got a store here called Game, which randomly was selling off stuff really cheap at one point, and that was one of them that I missed out on. So yeah, so I played that, and you guys were playing Kronologic?
Kronologic, yeah. So it's a deduction game. Basically, you're each given a sheet which has the layout of the mansion or wherever. It's kind of a bit like Cluedo, but a better version, because someone's been killed, and you're trying to work out who, and this get what time it was the detective that had been killed, I think, wasn't it?
Yep.
And you've got time frames, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you've got the places, and you've got the people. And what you do is each player can have a round where they'll pick either a place or a person. Either a time or a person, and then they slot it into the place, and it will tell you some information, and it will tell everyone some information. So it will basically say either, if you pick a person, it will tell you how many times that person has visited that place. And if you pick a time, it will tell you how many people are in that place. And you basically jot this down on your on your sheet, and you're trying to find a time when there was only one other person with the detective and no one else. And from all the information you're given, you're trying to deduce, so there's only 3 people that have ever been in the conservatory. Then I know that there's only one person at this time. Therefore, they must have moved from here to here at this time, and therefore they couldn't have been the one that killed the detective. And you work it out. And I think I did it in about 11 turns in the end. Like that.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that game. It's quite simple to teach, and it's quite simple to pick up. It's just quite hard to deduce. So, that's where the complexity comes, is you're trying to basically work out where these people have moved, what's going on from the information. And, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I didn't. But then, I was intrigued by this because it's the same or similar logic puzzle to Turing Machine, and the way it works with the kind of punch cards with the holes on. You're obviously matching that up to the card, and it's giving you that information. It's just, you're just trying to deduce down what this answer is. And I don't know. I just felt, for me, it's like, nah, I don't think this is my kind of jam. And I got a bit lost with it as well. Like, even how I kind of wrote my notes on my map, it was just a bit confusing. I kind of confused myself in the notes I was taking, and I was like, not for me. But it's fine. I can see why it's fun. And, as a kind of quick kind of family game, you can get people into it very fast and, figure the puzzle out. But I suppose once you've figured it out, you've solved it, and then you're done. But there are like 15 scenarios or something in the box. So yeah, not for me, but glad you enjoyed it.
Then we headed back, I think. And again, I just chilled out. I wasn't really in the mood for anything else. And you guys played some... JP was like, I've played a dinosaur something card game. And I was like 1920s dinosaur card game. And I was like, all right, okay. And then he showed me a picture and it wasn't even anything. I'd assumed it was like top trumps for dinosaurs or something. And it's not even anything like that.
Yeah, so we met two guys who were playing Paladins. And obviously... I've played Paladins once, and I was like, oh, do you guys know how to play? And they were like, no. And I was like, I can give you a very, very brief rundown, but it might help you pick up the rules quicker. So we started giving them a brief rundown. And then JP, I was like, oh, we'll play Shackleton base. And I thought, well, we still need 2 extra. And no one else was around at that time. So I was like, well, do you guys, after they'd set Paladins up and I gave them a brief teach, do you guys want to play Shackleton base with us instead? And they had picked up Paladins like quite cheap, I think. They picked up for like €25 or something ridiculous.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there was a sale on the last day in a stand, which was mostly foreign language, but they had all the Shem Phillips games there really cheap. And if I had more space in the suitcase, I'd have picked up some of them because, there was a bargain to be had there.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, yeah. And I started helping them put Paladins away. And then at one point, I think they just went, and just kind of put their arm across the table and just scooped it into the box. And I was like, oh my God. But yeah, they came over. It was a guy called Franz and Dragos. So Romanian and guy from the Netherlands. I think Franz also does the development for BGA, for the full stack development stuff. So I was confused at one point and thought it meant the games, but it's obviously the back end. But they sat down, we played Shackleton base again, and then they pulled out a little game because our brains were melted by the end of that game, called not 20 Strong, but
Roaring 20s.
Roaring 20s, thank you. Roaring 20s was a little bidding game that was quite unique in that every dinosaur had a certain food type that they liked. And what you were trying to do is build sets of dinosaurs. Like you could do runs, give you more points, but also doubles mean that you can trade a double in to get wild, but you can then also use the double to score points as well. So a little set-taking game where you could build these sets and get cool dinosaurs, but then also you're bidding on these dinosaurs to try and get sets off everyone else. So you'd have a hand of some certain fruits. You'd make a bid and you just say a number, say, 8. Someone else would bid and they'd increase it. And you also have diamonds, which are wild. But what was interesting is if you were the first to not bid, you had a shop and you could pick one of your cards and say mine. And basically that card would then go into your hand. So if there was nothing there you wanted, you could build up a better hand for the next card that would come out. And so it's just a simple little bidding game. And yeah, it was actually great fun though.
Nice.
Real nice set collection.
Yeah, like the artwork looked interesting. Obviously I didn't play the game, but JP showed me the artwork and it looked pretty interesting.
Yes, 20s dinosaurs. So it was dinosaurs in the 1920s.
Like, dressed up as mobsters and stuff like that. It's quite funny.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I think that was pretty much our Sunday. We then obviously both myself and JP and Davey with Paul and that, we will travel back on the Monday. I think it's fair to say, Davey, it sounded like you had an easier travel back than you did travel there.
It was a nice travel back. We also got to play, so I got to play Backstories. Great little it had the same function as Kronologic, where you had these little cards which had punches out and you slid them behind the card and flipped the card. But you had items and like certain story pieces that you could use to find out more, and then the story would progress. And we kind of fell forwards. We did everything wrong, and we kept progressing the story nonetheless. But great little game, and I'm going to play that with. I've borrowed it off of Paul, so I'm going to play that with Gemma, and I think we're going to really enjoy that game. So
the one that intrigued me on that one is that Paul said that. It sounds like there's not really a wrong or right sort of outcome. There's just different shades of kind of what you're going to get out of the the outcome?
I will say we were nearly dead. So I don't know what happens when you die, but we were literally hanging on by a thread. So I think you can fail.
Right. Okay.
But it gives you enough chances.
It's a choose your own adventure, right? So to some extent. So
it reminds me of Broken Sword. It reminded me like dead on of Broken Sword, if anyone's ever played that. But
so it reminded you of the Gallerist.
What?
In joke.
That's a Rob joke.
It's a Rob joke.
That was a curveball. It completely threw me. I was like, what?
It's nice to see
but I get the joke now. Yeah.
So obviously you had that on the journey back, and so you definitely, from the sounds of it, had a better journey back.
Well, yeah. Then also I played AI.
Oh, nice.
So played AI and played Monumental. AI is pretty much a cool little tableau builder where you start off with a certain card that gives you points for playing certain sets, colours, or combinations of cards. Cards have numbers as well as colours, and then the new cards will also have point builders as well, and you build a tableau.
Nice. Yeah, it's one I want to get to the table myself, because I've bought it with all the asymmetric mats as well.
The neoprene mats are very nice, and the production value, I was like, damn, this is a pretty game for just being a set of cards. I was like, what the hell is this? But it gives you a little like special foil card that you just put to the side that you put your deck on. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, don't need this, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, it gives you like a little neoprene thing as well, little neoprene slices that I really liked for your deck as well. And I thought, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so considering there's no real artwork, there's not a lot of artwork in it, it's more symbology. It does look quite pretty. Myself and JP did not have a better journey back than the way there. We got stuck, stood up on a train for a while, and I got repeatedly rammed by someone with a pushchair who felt that my leg was clearly in the way of their pushchair.
His sprained leg.
Oh, your bad leg as well.
Luckily, it wasn't. To be fair, it wasn't my bad leg. But
okay.
It was. I had to stand there while they just stared at me and repeatedly pushed the pushchair into me, and I was like, don't speak the language, so I'm just going to have to put up with this.
The problem with that, though,
they're trying to take out your good leg. That's what it was.
Yeah.
The problem is that they're not like a tube where you've got like a loop thing you can hold on to.
No,
right?
You just had to put your hands against the roof.
You have to press.
It's like a low roof, so you just pushed your hands and braced against the roof.
It's like a gym exercise session. It was. Oh my god, my arms!
And then we waited ages for shuttles and bag collection, everything. So our journey home was a little bit rougher. But yeah, I think that...
Yeah, their train system seemed awful.
On the way there, it was fantastic. I loved the trains.
On our way back, it was fantastic. So it was like, I don't know, it just has these breakdowns.
It's usual with public transport. There's a good time and there's a bad time. And I think we just hit the bad time.
We did spot, I did spot pretty much quite a person on Instagram has a lot of followers called Gnarly Carly Gaming, who's basically a lady called Carly. So I spotted her. She's on our flight home.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, do I go over and say hi? Like, we're at the end of Essen. We're all buggered and knackered and whatever. And everyone just, like, wants to get their bags and go home. So I thought, you know what? I won't. But I did message her and just said, oh, by the way, because she did an Essen post and said, we spotted you. But I thought I'd leave you alone because you probably had it all week of people just coming to say hi. And she said, you should have said hi. And I said, yeah, well, I thought it'd be polite, but next time I'll say hi. But yeah, just thought I'd mention that.
I think that leads us nicely on to the next point I wanted to bring up, which was that we just met so many lovely people, whether you were content creators or not. We had people just coming up to us. I had one guy just tap us on the shoulder and notice the things while we were desperately trying to get to Revenant and say, oh, you're a podcast. I love listening to new podcasts. Can I add you? And I literally just flung a card at him and went, yep, and then dove at Revenant because I was so focused on getting into that demo that I forgot completely to even talk about our podcast, sort of what it was or anything like that.
I got your social skills.
Yeah, flung him a QR code. There you go, scan that sort of thing. And he's followed us since. And there were a couple of moments where I was just a bit focused on gaming and was just like, I should have said hello properly. But so many people were lovely, came up to us, asked us about the podcast or what we'd played or anything like that. And the same as so many content creators that just said hello to. I managed to say hello to Z without humiliating myself this time, which was lovely. Said hello to a few more from the Dice Tower, Mike and Jason. And Slicker Drips and all of that lot, of all of Paul and all that lot we saw plenty of times. Saw and quickly said hello to Matt from Shut Up and Sit Down. He was looking very sort of relaxed and bohemian as he was wandering around the halls. And the one that caught me, because I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of their channel. I do like the work they put out, but I just don't watch enough of it, is Stella from Meeple University.
Stella and Tarrant. Yeah.
I think we bumped into them 7 or 8 times across the weekend. And each time I would just smile, perhaps give a bit of a wave. And she always smiled and gave a wave back and was just so polite as well. Just literally anyone who'd smile at her, she'd give them a little wave back. And I was like, I don't know that I have the stamina to be that nice to people all weekend, knowing that she would have had that 100 times over the weekend. When you're kind of as big as they are at Meeple University, you know that they would have been stopped and said hello to. And the fact that we saw them on Thursday, and we saw them on Sunday, and they were just as happy on the Thursday as they were on the Sunday.
Never forget your charisma stat.
Yeah, that's it. Nearly as good as your luck stat.
Nothing's as good as that.
But yeah, I don't know if anyone else bumped into anyone else that they sort of thought of or wanted to give a shout out to.
Pretty much mentioned everybody for me.
Yeah, thank you for everyone from the press event. Obviously me walking around by myself, but everyone was nice and chatty and and friendly. So that was a great thing, really. So yeah.
So, a few questions before we call it a day, because this is already running into a long one, and this is part 2. So this is our second chonky boy of a podcast episode. So, what did we miss out on? What did we not get to? What did we not bring back?
Do you want me to start? I've got a couple.
Off you go.
So there was Catacomb, which is quite an interesting game done by Thundergriff Games, which was one in a can.
Oh, okay, not the flicking.
No, it was in a can, and you get to you basically have to build your cats up. It's a very simple game, but it looked like a really good travel light game where you build the cats up in certain combinations in a little tower. But I just really like the design of it's a game in a can. So you open the can and pour your game out. It just for me, travel wise, that's perfect because every bag or backpack usually has a drinks section. So being able to put like a little game in there and then just pull out the game.
It's like the Mint series, isn't it? That comes in little Mint. All their games.
Yes, exactly. Exactly nice. Like that. So that was my little game. And then the big one I missed out on really was Tea Garden and Galileo. I wanted to play those, didn't get a chance. Hoping to at GridCon.
JP, what about yourself? What did you miss out on?
The only one thing I'm going to say, because I absolutely got most of the things I wanted to. I didn't have a long list, to be fair, because my luggage situation was a lot lighter and smaller than everybody else's due to tightness. So the only one is Suna Valo. It's just the one game that I wish I got to sooner in the week and just picked it up. And I'm regretting that decision of going there on the Sunday morning when, let's face it, most things are sold out.
There was a lot sold out by the Sunday morning, which is fair enough. Yeah,
which is you got to expect that. And that's for me, just that one game. Nice. I want it now.
Yeah, that's top of my list. Also, one that we went to see on Sunday, and I didn't know that I wanted a demo of. I just wanted to pick it up. Was Babylon. So Babylon's like this little 3D puzzle. It's not really a puzzle either. You're kind of building up. Everyone's building up their own little temple. With these 3D bits, and I didn't know enough about it, but it looked really interesting. I was quite happy just to buy it and bring it back, but it was already sold out by Geek Attitude Games. There was then loads of bargains on the Sunday, and if I had an infinite amount of space, I probably would have spent my entire year's budget of board games on different bundles, and I'd just get the expansion free and all that kind of stuff. What I did really miss out on though was my spiralized potato.
Oh, yeah, that was gutting.
The deep fried spiralized potato man was not there.
Crime of the Essen, that was.
By Sunday, I got to the point where I asked on Paul's Slack channel and said, please tell me I've just missed it and he's somewhere here. No, everyone, and there was quite a few people who were like, no, I've looked everywhere. Spiralized potato man is not here. So really missed out on that one as well. Yeah, because I think I listed that on Paul's channel of what I was looking forward to. Spiralized potatoes.
Yeah, every day you said. We didn't even get it one
every day I looked for them in case I'd missed them somewhere. But
I'm going to buy a deep fat fryer and I'll learn how to make them, and I'll make you a spiralised potato, Adrian.
Yes, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. But I
all right. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, sod you
now. I'm not doing it.
It's not
doing it.
Same. Good. So what lessons did we learn from last year that we brought into this year?
I'll start on this one if you like.
Go
so
on.
my lessons learned, from last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a joint lessons learned and still need to learn it. But it's this year I did more preparation, but yet still didn't do enough preparation.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So last year I winged it. I'm not going to lie. I just kind of rocked up and thought, well, it's the first Essen. I'll just kind of bounce around and see what happens. And we weren't there on the press capacity either. So we were there as a general punter, right? So this year I thought, no, I'll do a bit more prep. But I think I left it too late. But I'm glad of the prep I did do, because it made me zone in on the games that I wanted to kind of check out more and do more things. So I think that's the lesson learned for me, is to do that. But also to take more time to game. We were there 4 days rather than 3. So we had the extra day. I know I was demoing, so that would cut into the time. So probably for me, when you net up all the demo hours, it probably meant I had probably just slightly under 3 days of, Essen hall time, maybe even a bit less. So actually just pacing myself to leave earlier and actually enjoy relaxing more and playing games more was something I definitely enjoyed more this year than last year, which is you get to the hotel about 9 after a meal and doing all those things. Then you go, oh, should we play a game? And it ends up being, quite late, or you don't do it because you're just knackered and you go straight to bed. So for me, I felt like I got the balance better for me. So I got a bit of halls, a bit of Essen, a bit of gaming, a bit of this, bit of that. So yeah, that's me.
Yes, similar. Well, I thought I was more prepared last year than everyone else, because I actually had a list of games that I wanted to go after. And this year I felt like I'd done even more prep, and yet I still didn't feel prepared enough. I wonder if it's just going to be a thing of no matter how hard I prepare, have I prepared enough? But the thing I learned was to do pre-orders.
Yeah.
Having had the issue with Far Away, where I just stood in a queue for an hour for Far Away last year, and the same with Satori, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do pre-orders this year. And that's tough, right? Because sometimes there's not a lot of information out when they're, like the pre-orders for Daitoshi sold out before they'd even put a how to play video out for. So you'd have to pre-order it knowing that you really wanted it. So it's tough. Mm-hmm. It's a tough game to play with pre-orders, but that was one of my big ones that I felt I learned last year, was prepare more, and then even more than that. Yeah. And then any pre-orders you feel like you do need, go and find out if there's pre-orders. If there's a game you like, go and find their website, go and find out if there's pre-orders for it and do it, because I managed to get a few pre-orders in, and some of those games would have run out. David, what about you?
So I felt like I actually prepared this year for what games. I had a nice little list of what games I wanted to go see. And for once I was the one going, I want to go check this game. I want to go check this game, which usually isn't me. Usually I just wing it because I'm like, I'll play any game. I know I had some prerequisites to kind of feel, because my catalogue of games is usually really heavy. So I realised that when I have people around, sometimes I go, I don't want to put this game. So I needed to fill some gaps that's in my own personal collection. So I came prepared this time. But pre-orders I wasn't expecting, because, and the way that the bookings for some demos, the fact it's not uniformed across the whole convention is something next year that I'll know. With some publishers, you have to book online for the demo, or you're not going to get a demo.
Yeah.
Others, you ask them and they say just turn up on the day. And that's fine. And then others have a mix. The mix, I think, is the best way to do it, because then you've got people who want to do it early, and people that maybe don't know anything about the game who will do it at the expo. Knowing that information for next year, there are probably some games I'm going to look at and go, okay, I'm going to have to pre-book a demo with them as well. So that's what I'm going to have to look at and go from there. But yeah. I've also learned that you can park at the expo as press. So I'm definitely driving next year, and I'm going to park at the expo and fill the car up with games, much to my partner's distress probably. But
Yeah, but you don't store your board games at home. You store them around everyone else's.
Exactly. It's the smart way of
Smart
storing
way.
games.
I mean, that segued us nicely into what have we learnt for next year. JP, what have you learnt next year? Do you think?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is it goes into that preparation piece. So whilst I did more preparation on the games I wanted to check out, which I had my list as well, I have learned that even probably a month before Essen is coming up, is to kind of reach out to those publishers and just try to make sure that they know that we're coming, that they know that we're a podcast, and it's not like we're just some strangers when we turn up on the day. So I think that's a big thing for us as a podcast, but also to make sure that press event. I really felt like I missed out on that press event just being there. And Dave, you did a cracking job and represented us, but I think if maybe more of us were there, we could have divided and conquered and done more of that networking piece that we probably needed. But to be fair, I mean, you did an awesome job of representing us anyway, so maybe it wouldn't have made that much difference. But
no, it'd be nice to have everyone there as well.
Just
though, obviously.
You want to see it, don't you? You want that advanced preview. So really, it's, from a listener's point of view, it's probably like, well, we don't care about that, JP, because that's just a podcast thing. But I think that is my personal, what I will take into next year is just better preparation.
Also harder for people to recognise us, even with we've got the tops on. Sometimes people don't look at that, but because we don't have any visual media other than maybe our TikTok, but usually that's just a still photo of our face, and a lot of those it's harder to recognise because it's our voices as well. I think it's a bit harder sometimes to associate the two.
Yeah, versus a YouTube channel, which is very visual and more prominent in that way. But it's one of them.
My one's a little bit hard to, unfortunately, I think, learn from. But what I discovered was that it's a lot easier because when you buy a stand there or hire a stand, however you want to put it, you kind of automatically added to the app because you've bought a stand and therefore they're going to add you to an app. If you want to add a product, you have to go through a bit of a process. I was talking to someone on one of the stands that was saying that they couldn't get all of their games on to the app because the process was so long and it was taking them so long to get their games onto the app. And they did say they felt like there was something going on there because it hadn't been as tough in previous years, but had said it every year. It's not the easiest to get your game on the app. So there are games that are not on that app. And it's worth checking out publishers individually. If you like a publisher or if you've seen a game that you think might be there, don't rely on that app because not every game is on there. And I think we're all guilty this year as well of having relied on that app a little bit more. Mm-hmm. As well as, like I say, I just watched a load of top 10 videos. But then I noticed that a couple of those videos had games on there that weren't on the app. And it's just interesting because I would assume that app was kind of the Bible. And it's not, because you have to, and understandably so, the Essen SPIEL itself doesn't have time to go out there and research all this stuff. You have to apply, and therefore some companies don't apply all of their games that are new. They'll apply the top ones, or they just won't do any of them. And so it's kind of a bit of an odd mix in that front. So, so if there's a game you hear about that you can't find on the app, go and do your research is, I think, my lesson for next year. I think that naturally leads on to, and you've kind of answered this a little bit to some extent, are we all back next year?
Well, Davey's answered it.
Answered
he's driving.
I'm 100%.
Yeah, same. I said to myself before this trip that, because I was surprised I was even coming back this year, if I'm being honest, I said I won't go every year. And then I went back the next year. And then before this trip, I was like, I won't go next year. I won't do 2025. I'll have a year off. And then I went. And then I had a great time, had an awesome time, and it's reinvigorated me again in the hobby space and the games and everything. I just feel energized by Essen, and now I'm like, I want to go again next year, which is exactly what happened to me the year before, and this is why I ended up booking to go again. And I'm pretty much very, very highly confident that I will be going next year. I've not sorted anything out yet because actually Essen is later in October. Next year than it was obviously this year. So certain hotels you can't get access to until a year before. Yeah. So we're kind of waiting a few weeks and then sorting out some of that logistics. But I mean, if Davey's driving, that means I've just got to sit in the car and sing. So I can handle that. I can do that. So that's not a problem.
Yeah, I'm in the same
I'll
boat. Just beforehand, I felt a little bit, oh God, I've got to go do Essen, and I'd only just come off of holiday, and obviously work was stressful, so it was like getting to this event that's in a different country, it felt a little bit draining. But then as soon as I was there, I was like enjoying it, and then as soon as I've come back, I've changed my mind, and I'm definitely going next year as well. So
nice. What about you, mate?
I'm on the fence. So cost-wise, for us, it's not exactly the cheapest. I think I worked out before I even bought a game, just doing tubes and bits and pieces. And I didn't include all the food in this either. I spent £650 doing parking at the airport, flying, the underground to and from the event, all that kind of stuff came to 650 quid, which is quite a chunk of money before you've even bought a game, right? And
that's dropped £1,000 before it even got there, Adrian.
Yeah, and that was sharing a room that JP had booked and all that lot well in advance. That wasn't like Davey. We haven't really talked about it, but you booked really last minute for your hotel because you've been let down a couple of times with some Airbnbs and then ended up in a hotel last minute, basically, right?
Yeah, and it was actually the cheapest hotel that I could find on there. I said not the cheapest. I could have gone outside of the city.
Yeah,
it was the cheapest location-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Location-wise, it was right next to the main central train station, and it was pretty good. And it ended up being €600 or €660, which compared to everywhere else at the time was cheap. So I remember looking through the messages, and a year ago I was like, oh, I can't find anywhere. Everywhere's like €600. That's too expensive for me. And then this year it was like everywhere else was like 1,400, between 1,000 and 1,400. So it looked cheap. So I was like, oh, I'll get that one.
I'll have it.
Yeah. It's all down. It's all
perspective, mate.
Yeah, it is all perspective. It's all down to the relevance, I guess.
So it's a lot of money that I could put towards other conventions. You know, we've talked about like Aircon and Tabletop Scotland and stuff like that we've not done either. I've kind of had on my list for a long time, but it keeps climbing up the list, is the Dice Tower Cruise, which is a couple, $2 or $3 grand potentially. And so all of that stuff is there, but I don't know. I think that's a factor, but the biggest part for me is the fact that 90% of the games that we've gone to view or that we've looked at or picked up is available within 2 weeks. It's not like, we talked about Suna, Valo and some other bits and pieces that aren't, Babylon's not going to be there till November, end of November. Daitoshi's not going to be. But the fact that we're talking about end of November last year and years before, games were not available for months afterwards. You were talking like January, February the next year. I ordered Castle Combo and it was out before we left. I was looking at the Middle-earth Duel, Seven Wonders Duel remake. That was available literally the day of. You could order it into the UK on the day of. And I don't think there's enough of an experience there personally for me to keep doing it every year. I don't know. There was something missing this year, and I think it helped last year that we went with 5 of us, 6 of us.
Yeah,
it made it a bit more of a holiday, a bit more of a sort of something out of it. Not saying that your company was terrible, but just that I felt like it was a bit more of a group holiday. So that combined with the price, combined with the fact that I don't know how much of an advanced start. If you said, oh, you can have 650 quid towards buying games, and they're all available within a month of when it's released at Essen.
Yeah, it's a tough sell.
It starts to get much more of a tough sell. When it's like, oh, you're going to have to wait 6 months for this game, which there are. I'm not saying there's not. There are some games that are like that, or that you'll just not get your hands on now. There are some of them, but it's a much smaller percentage. And I think Essen is less appetizing already than it was last year, than it was the year before. Before I met you guys, there were people saying, oh, come to Essen. And the idea of the fact I'd get my hands on games 6-9 months, like a massive group of games 6-9 months in advance, was a big selling point. And I still didn't go. The fact that now they're all so easily available, like so many of them are available in advance, makes it a much tougher sell again.
Yeah, I think it's a networking side I enjoy as well, though.
Same.
So that's the reason why I'm probably going to go again, is because I enjoyed that side of it as well. And it's not just about the games I can get, which I did get Endeavour in the end, by the way. It's on its way.
Oh, nice. Did you?
I've had to ship it in from America.
That's a turnaround from the part 1. So from part 1 to part 2, you've managed to get a copy.
From America. So I've ended up spending £10 more, which isn't too bad in the end.
That's not the end of the world.
Bad at all. No. Taking that one last point before we then outro and finish this is, what were our highlights? What's the 1 or 2 things that were your highlights of Essen? Go on, JP.
I think for me, the highlights of Essen was being able to demo. I think that was such an enjoyable experience, being kind of behind the curtain at Mindclash Games a little bit and meeting some of the team there. And them just making me feeling so welcome was a definite highlight for me. The fact that I'd happily do it again. I'd happily go back and do that again, no problem. But other than that, from the games I was playing, my highlights of games, full games I've played, for me, SETI and Shackleton are just sat right at the top, probably similar to Davey. I think actually Shackleton's probably edging it. I think Shackleton again, it's another game I just want to keep playing, because
that 4-player game was something else. I thought this incredible. It's the first game where I've been like, yeah, this works. This is better at 4 players.
Yeah, just feel satisfied to me. Yeah. I was like, it's just so good. Scratches the. It's
because they don't shut off a lot of the board with 3 players.
Yeah,
so it's more open. Whereas 4 players, it was so tight. We nearly covered the whole board. So it was like. Yeah, it was.
So that as the games, and like I've already explained, some of the kind of highlights and the demos and stuff we've experienced. But yeah, just hanging out with you guys, I think it's always good fun. I've always enjoyed it, and I think this year is very different to last year because of the group dynamics. But I'm not saying it's a better or worse way; it's just different. And it's just nice, I think, sometimes to have a smaller group to get to know people a bit better, because the more people you have in a group, you spend less time naturally with the one-on-ones that you would normally have. So yeah, that's for me just an enjoyable week, knackering week, but so glad I've done it. I feel completely hyped about board games even more than I don't know if you can feel hyped about board games even more than we do, but yeah, I'm definitely kind of more kind of in the hobby again, and just can't wait to play all of this stuff. It's great.
What about yourself, Davey? What were highlights for you?
The highlights for me were probably SETI, just because I played it for so long that it became it became a meme, so it was just funny. What game are you playing tonight? What game do we play every night? SETI.
SETI.
Yeah, and just I quite liked going around playing a load of 2 players as well. It was a little bit different. Also, spending time with you guys was just really good fun. I'm an easy being. It's fine.
Simple creature.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, mate?
Well, I'm hoping gaming-wise, a lot of my highlights are currently now sat in my pile of recently bought games, right? So a lot of them I haven't got to play yet, so I'm hoping there's some gems in there. What we actually played, I think it's fair to say Suna Valo was top, but Revenant was a pleasant surprise. I was expecting it might be good, but I didn't quite realise how much I was enjoying it, or going to enjoy it, I should say, until near the end. Again, it was a different dynamic. I enjoyed hanging out. Me and Davey got to play a load of 2-player games, which I probably wouldn't have done in a group. I wouldn't have gone and found a load of 2-player games. And I was a bit like, Davey's going to be really mean. But actually, I thought we had a load of good 2-player games where it was a nice chill.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, and then having a catch up with JP again. I'm the newbie to the group, so I don't always get a chance to one-on-one chat with people. So sharing a room kind of forces you into that situation a little bit. So it's just nice to have a catch up there. So yeah, I had a blast while I was there, definitely. But yeah, game-wise, Suna Valo and Revenant, I think, were my 2 highlights at the moment.
Yeah,
and we'll see what else turns up out of my pile of purchased games.
Yeah, nice.
Real. It's nice to relive. It kind of can be a bit of a whirlwind in the moment, and then you take your notes and you relive it, and you're like, oh yeah, we got through loads. Forgot about this, forgot about that. Forgot how much I enjoyed this and that.
Yeah, 5 hours worth of pod.
Yeah, potentially.
Recorded.
Yeah.
Really a working day.
Yeah. I mean, it's 3.5 hours recording this so far. Oh God! Let's wind up. Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed it too, listening to it. Us talk and ramble about everything we've played, and hopefully, it's given you a bit of insight as to what we've enjoyed and what we haven't enjoyed, because that can be just as informative sometimes. Thank you very much for listening. If you know anyone out there who you think might be interested in our podcast, as always, please just give them a nudge, send them a link, tell them they might enjoy this, get them to give it a download and a listen. If they do, they do. Great. If they don't,
go around their house.
Yeah,
awesome.
Then tell them they need better taste in podcasts.
Wow.
As always, on the socials is a good way to reach out to us. It's all in the show notes below. Please do drop us a comment, drop us a like, whatever. We love interacting with you guys on socials. And as always, if you've got a few pounds and pennies, and you particularly like what we do, there's our coffee supporters pledge as well, that you can go there and send us a few pounds to say thank you very much. We always try and put it to the best use we can. We've saved up a little bit more, and we're already discussing what we do with that next little bit of money. So yeah, until then, whose turn is it anyway?
Schwip, schwip,
Schwip, schwap.